Chapter 1. The King's Gambit. What if Robb Stark sent Jon Snow to negotiate with Daenerys? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The Great Hall of Riverrun echoes with the sound of boots on stone as Robb Stark strides toward the High Table. 3 ravens arrived before dawn, each carrying reports that would have seemed like madness just months before. Ships' captains returning from the free cities speak in hushed tones of dragons soaring over Slaver's Bay. Dragons. Living, breathing, fire-breathing dragons for the first time in a century and a half. Robb holds the parchments in his hands, reading each account again. Captain Horan Pike of the trading vessel, Northern Wind, writes of seeing 3 beasts circling the red brick pyramids of Astapor. A Pentoshi merchant swears one of the creatures burned an entire slave ship to ash in minutes. Most telling of all, a letter from Jorah Mormont confirms what Robb hardly dares believe. Daenerys Targaryen lives, and she commands these dragons. My king. Maester Vyman approaches with careful steps. The War Council awaits your pleasure. Robb nods grimly. The War Council. His mother Catelyn will want to discuss ransoming Jaime Lannister. The Blackfish will press for attacking Harrenhal. Rose Bolton will suggest another strike at the twins. But Robb's mind is already racing toward a different kind of war entirely. The solar fills quickly. Catelyn takes her seat to Robb's right, her face drawn with the weight of endless worry. Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, settles across from Rose Bolton, whose pale eyes reveal nothing as always. Rickard Karstark enters last, still wearing his mail from the morning patrol. My lords. Mother. Robb places the letters on the table. We have news from across the narrow sea. Catelyn leans forward. From Tyrion Lannister. Has he agreed to our terms? Not from the Lannisters. From the free cities. Robb taps the parchments. Daenerys Targaryen is alive. She has conquered Astapor with an army of Unsullied, and she commands 3 dragons. Silence falls over the chamber like snow. The Blackfish is the first to speak. Dragons? His weathered face creases with doubt. Robb, the last dragon died more than a century ago. These must be tales grown larger with each telling. 3 different captains, 3 different ships, all report the same thing. Robb's voice carries the weight of certainty. Sir Jorah Mormont himself confirms it in this letter. The Targaryens have returned to power, and they have brought magic back into the world. Rose Bolton's voice cuts through the tension like a blade. What does this mean for our cause, Your Grace? Robb stands and walks to the great window overlooking the rushing waters of the Red Fork. For months they have fought the Lannisters across the Riverlands. Every victory costs them men they cannot replace. Every defeat brings Tywin's golden lions closer to total dominance. The Iron Throne grows stronger, while the North grows weaker with each passing day. It means we may have found an ally, Robb says without turning. The last Targaryen seeks to reclaim her father's throne. The Lannisters murdered her family, just as they murdered mine. Our enemies are the same. Catelyn's voice rises sharp with alarm. Robb, you cannot be thinking of allying with a Targaryen. They are madness and fire. Remember what the Mad King did to your grandfather and uncle. I remember what Robert did to the Targaryen children as well, Robb replies, turning to face his mother. Aegon and Rhaenys were babes, innocents, yet their skulls were smashed against walls because they carried the wrong name. Perhaps Daenerys Targaryen remembers that too. The Blackfish strokes his grey beard. Even if this Dragon Queen exists, even if she would consider an alliance, how would we reach her? Slaver's Bay is half a world away. We send an envoy, Robb says simply. Someone who carries our blood and our values. Someone she would respect. Catelyn's face pales. Not Edmure. I will not have my brother risk his life on this madness. Not Edmure, Robb agrees. Jon. The name hangs in the air like a sword poised to fall. Catelyn rises from her chair, her hands pressed flat against the table. Jon Snow is a sworn brother of the Night's Watch. He has taken vows. He cannot serve as your envoy. He can, if those vows are set aside. Robb moves to the table and places both hands on its surface. I am king. I can legitimize him as Jon Stark and request his release from the Watch to serve the realm in a different capacity. Roose Bolton tilts his head slightly. The Night's Watch has not released a man from his vows in living memory. These are not ordinary times. Robb's voice grows stronger with conviction. The realm bleeds from civil war. Foreign queens command dragons. If ever there was a time for extraordinary measures, it is now. Rickard Karstark speaks for the first time. Why Jon Snow? Why not send a lord of standing? Because Jon carries Stark blood, Robb explains. Because he was raised with honor and duty, not politics and gold. Because he has nothing to gain from this mission except service to his family and his king. The Targaryens respect strength, but they also understand honor. Jon embodies both. The Blackfish nods slowly. The boy has proved himself capable. His actions at Winterfell showed courage. This is folly, Catelyn insists. Jon is a bastard. What message does it send to legitimize him now, when you have no heir of your body? Robb meets his mother's eyes steadily. It sends the message that I choose family over tradition, that I value loyalty over birthright, that the Starks stand together against our enemies no matter what names we were born with. Maester Wyman clears his throat, hesitantly. Your Grace, such a mission would require significant preparation. Gifts appropriate for a queen, a proper escort, safe passage through hostile waters. Then we begin immediately. Robb turns to each member of his council in turn. Lord Bolton, I need your assessment of what forces we can spare for Jon's escort. Uncle, work with Maester Wyman on appropriate gifts, northern steel, furs, perhaps some of the gold we captured from the Lannister baggage train. Lord Karstark, I want your thoughts on the safest route to Slaver's Bay. And the letters? Roose Bolton asks. 2 ravens fly tonight, Robb decides. 1 to Castle Black, explaining my decision and requesting Jon's release. Another to Daenerys Targaryen herself, announcing our desire for alliance against our common enemies. Catelyn shakes her head in dismay. You risk everything on the word of sailors, and a hope that this Dragon Queen will treat with us fairly. I risk everything anyway, Mother. Robb's voice carries the weight of kingship and the pain of loss. Every day we fight the Lannisters, we lose good men. Every week that passes brings Tywin closer to crushing us entirely. If there is a chance, even a small chance, that we can find a powerful ally, then we must take it. And if Jon fails? If this Targaryen proves Maud like her father? Then Jon will have the sense to withdraw and return home. But if she proves honorable, if she proves willing to work with us, rather than against us. Robb pauses, looking out the window again at the river that has seen so much blood. Then perhaps we can end this war sooner, rather than later. The Blackfish rises from his chair. I'll begin preparations for the escort immediately. What sort of force are you thinking? 12 men? 24? Enough to show respect. Not so many as to seem threatening, Robb replies. 20 good men. Northern knights and men-at-arms who understand diplomacy as well as sword-play. Men who will follow Jon's lead and reflect well on our cause. It will take time to arrange passage across the narrow sea, Meister Wyman observes. The Free Cities are still neutral, but finding a captain willing to sail to Slavers Bay? Lord Manderley can provide a ship, Robb decides. The Manderleys have trading connections throughout the Free Cities. They'll know captains who can handle the journey. As the council disperses to their various tasks, Catelyn lingers behind. Mother and son stand alone in the solar as evening light fades over the riverlands. "Robb," she says softly, "I understand why you want to try this. But legitimizing Jon, it changes everything. It means admitting he is your brother in truth, as well as in affection." "He has always been my brother," Robb replies. "Now the rest of the world will know it too. And if you die without issue? If this war takes you as it took your father?" Robb places a gentle hand on his mother's shoulder. "Then Jon Stark will be a worthy heir to Winterfell. Better a bastard who understands honor than a lord who knows only gold." Catelyn looks out the window at the darkening sky. Somewhere beyond the horizon, across vast leagues of ocean, a young queen commands dragons and dreams of home. Somewhere to the north, her husband's bastard serves at the wall, unaware that his king and brother is about to change his life forever. "May the old gods and the new protect them both," she whispers. Later that night, Robb sits alone in his chamber, quill in hand, writing the letters that will set this desperate gambit into motion. The first, to Lord Commander Mormont, is formal and respectful, requesting Jon's release for diplomatic service to the realm. The second proves more difficult. How do you write to a legendary queen you have never met? How do you offer alliance to someone who commands dragons? In the end, he writes simply and honestly, as his father taught him. He explains the North's cause, their shared enemies, and their desire for justice. He offers friendship between equals, not submission to a superior. He speaks of Jon as his envoy and brother, a man worthy of trust and respect. When the ravens fly north and east before dawn, they carry more than mere messages. They carry the hopes of the North, the dreams of alliance, and the first threads of a web that will either bind the realm together in peace or tear it apart in fire and blood. The game has begun, and Robb Stark has made his opening move. Now only time will tell whether he has chosen wisdom or folly, salvation or destruction, for himself and all who follow his banner. The young wolf has bet everything on ice, and fire learning to work as one. Chapter 2. The Bastard's Choice. The raven arrives at Castle Black with the grey light of dawn, its black wings cutting through the morning mist that rises from the haunted forest. Meister Aemon receives the bird in his tower, ancient fingers working carefully to remove the scroll from its leg. The old man's milky eyes cannot read the words, but his weathered hands trace the Stark seal pressed into the red wax. "Clydas," he calls to his steward, "fetch Jon Snow. Tell him a raven has come from River Run." Jon stands at the top of the wall when the summons reaches him, watching the endless expanse of wilderness that stretches beyond the realm of men. The wind cuts through his black cloak like a blade, but he barely feels the cold. His mind is on the war raging far to the south, on his brother Robb wearing a crown he never wanted, on battles being fought while Jon keeps watch over empty forests. "Jon Snow." Clydas climbs the wooden steps with careful precision. "Meister Aemon requests your presence. A message has arrived." The walk to Aemon's tower feels longer than usual. Jon's boots echo against the stone corridors of Castle Black, each step carrying him toward news that could change everything or nothing. Ravens from the south bring word of victories and defeats, of lords declared traitors and kings proclaimed dead. In the past months, Jon has learned to steel himself for whatever darkness might be contained in those small scrolls. Maester Aemon sits behind his desk, the letter spread before him like a judgment. His blind eyes turn toward Jon as the young man enters the chamber. "Sit, Jon Snow," the Maester says gently. "We have much to discuss." Jon takes the offered chair, his dark eyes fixed on the parchment. The Stark direwolf stares back at him from the broken seal, a symbol that still makes his heart ache with memories of home. "The letter comes from your brother," Aemon continues. "King Robb Stark writes to Lord Commander Mormont with a most unusual request." "What does he want?" Jon asks, though part of him already knows the answer will complicate his life beyond measure. "He wants you." Aemon's voice carries the weight of years and wisdom. "He asks that you be released from your vows to serve as his envoy on a diplomatic mission of the greatest importance." The words hit Jon like a physical blow. Released from his vows. The idea seems impossible, absurd. Men join the Night's Watch for life. They give up their names, their lands, their families to serve the realm until death. No brother has been released from his vows in living memory. "That's not possible," Jon says quietly. "I swore an oath. I gave my word before the old gods. Your brother believes otherwise." Aemon reaches for a second parchment. "He has also sent a letter addressed to you personally. Perhaps you should read his words yourself." Jon takes the letter with hands that tremble slightly. Robb's familiar script covers the page, each word chosen with the care of a king who knows the weight of his commands. "Jon, by the time you read this, you will know that I have asked for your release from the Night's Watch. I do not make this request lightly, nor do I make it only as your king. I make it as your brother, who needs you now more than ever. Reports have reached us from across the narrow sea. Daenerys Targaryen lives, and she commands dragons. Living dragons, Jon. The first seen in more than a century. She has conquered Astapor and builds an army to reclaim her father's throne. I believe we can make common cause with her. The Lannisters are her enemies, as much as they are ours. But such an alliance requires an envoy worthy of trust, someone who carries our blood and our values. There is no one I trust more than you. I know what I ask. I know the weight of the vows you have taken. But these are not ordinary times. The realm bleeds, and we must use every advantage we can find. I need you to sail to Slaver's Bay and treat with the Dragon Queen in my name. I have legitimized you as Jon Stark in the eyes of gods and men. You are my brother in truth now, not just in affection. If the worst should happen to me in this war, Winterfell will need an heir who understands honor. That man is you. The choice is yours, as it must be. I will not command you to break vows made in good faith, but I pray you will see that sometimes serving the realm means choosing a different path than the one we first set upon. Your brother and king, Robb Stark. Jon reads the letter twice, then sets it down with careful precision. Legitimized. Jon Stark. The names feel strange in his mind, like clothes that do not quite fit. All his life he has been Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell, loved but never quite belonging. Now Robb offers him a place at the high table, a true name, and a mission that could determine the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. What do you think? Aemon asks gently. I think my brother asks the impossible, Jon replies, but his voice lacks conviction. Perhaps, or perhaps he asks the necessary. The old Maester leans back in his chair. Tell me, Jon Snow, why did you take the black? The question catches Jon off guard. He considers several answers before settling on the truth. I wanted to matter. I wanted to serve something greater than myself. At Winterfell, I would always be the bastard. Here, I could be a brother among brothers. And have you found what you sought? Jon thinks of his time at Castle Black, the friendships forged in the training yard, the respect earned through hard service, the sense of purpose that comes from standing against the darkness. But he also thinks of the empty forests beyond the wall, the declining numbers of the watch, the feeling that the world moves on while they stand guard over ghosts and memories. I have found honor, Jon says slowly, but I sometimes wonder if I have found purpose. Aemon nods as if this answer satisfies him. Come, we must speak with the Lord Commander. This decision is too important to make alone. The walk to Jor Mormont's solar takes them through the heart of Castle Black. They pass brothers going about their daily duties, unaware that one of their own may soon leave them forever. Jon catches sight of Samwell Tarly in the library, bent over an ancient tome, and feels a pang of loss. Sam has been his closest friend since arriving at the Wall. How can he abandon that friendship for a mission that may end in failure? Lord Commander Mormont looks up from his correspondence as Jon and Aemon enter his chambers. The old bear's weathered face shows no surprise, only the grim acceptance of a man who has faced difficult decisions throughout his long life. Jon Snow, Mormont says without preamble. I've been expecting you. Sit. Jon takes the chair across from the Lord Commander's desk, while Aemon settles beside him. Mormont holds up Robb's official letter, its royal seal already broken. Your brother asks for something unprecedented, Mormont begins. In 800 years, the Night's Watch has never released a man from his vows for diplomatic service. I know, my lord, Jon replies. I would not ask you to break tradition for my sake. But these are not traditional times. Mormont sets the letter aside and fixes Jon with his steady gaze. The Watch has 47 men at Castle Black. Eastwatch has even fewer. The Shadow Tower struggles with less than 200. We guard 700 miles of wall with barely 600 men. The numbers hang in the air like a condemnation. Jon has known the Watch was declining, but hearing it stated so bluntly makes the crisis real. We need allies, Mormont continues. We need the realm to remember that we serve a purpose. If your brother can forge an alliance with this Targaryen queen, if he can end the war in the south and restore peace, then perhaps men will remember their duty to the Wall. You would release me? Jon asks, hardly daring to believe it. I would trade one good man for the chance of renewed support for our cause, Mormont says bluntly. You serve the realm here, Jon Snow, but you might serve it better as Jon Stark, envoy to a dragon queen. Aemon speaks for the first time since entering the chamber. There is precedent if we look far enough back. During the Dance of Dragons, Lord Commander Marston Waters allowed several brothers to serve as envoys between the rival Targaryen claimants. That was 2 centuries ago, Jon points out. And the wall still stands, Aemon replies with a slight smile. Sometimes, survival requires adaptation. Mormont stands and moves to the window that overlooks the practice yard. Below, recruits train with wooden swords under the watchful eye of Sir Alliser Thorne. The sound of their efforts drifts up through the glass like echoes of battles yet to come. The choice is yours, Jon, Mormont says, without turning. Stay, and you will always have a place here. You have the makings of a fine officer. In time, you might even sit at this desk yourself. And if I go, then you go with our blessing and our hopes. You carry the Watch's gratitude for your service and our prayers for your success. Jon looks between the 2 older men, seeing in their faces the weight of leadership and sacrifice. Mormont commands the dying remnant of an ancient order. Aemon serves faithfully despite blindness and age. Both have given their lives to the Watch, and now they offer to let him go. "I need time to think," Jon says finally. "Of course." Mormont returns to his desk. "But do not take too long. If you are going, you must leave soon. The Narrow Sea is dangerous in winter, and your brother's war will not wait for spring." Jon rises and bows to both men before leaving the Solar. The corridors of Castle Black feel different now, charged with possibility and loss. He makes his way to the library, where he finds Sam surrounded by books and scrolls. "Jon!" Sam looks up with a smile that fades when he sees his friend's expression. "What's wrong?" Jon sits beside Sam and explains everything. Robb's letter, the legitimization, the mission to find Daenerys Targaryen. Sam listens without interruption, his round face growing more serious with each detail. "Dragons," Sam says when Jon finishes. "Actual dragons, like in the old stories. That's what the reports say. And Robb wants you to negotiate with her, with the mother of dragons herself." Sam shakes his head in wonder. "It's like something out of a song." "It's not a song, Sam, it's real. And I have to decide whether to abandon my vows for a mission that might end with my death." Sam considers this for a long moment, then reaches for one of his books. "Do you know what I was reading when you came in? A history of the Dance of Dragons. Maester Aemon mentioned it, didn't he?" Jon nods. "Lord Commander Waters did release brothers to serve as envoys. The Watch survived. More than that, it helped end a civil war that was tearing the realm apart." Sam closes the book and looks directly at Jon. "Maybe that's what we're supposed to do. Maybe protecting the realm means more than just guarding the wall. And maybe I'm just looking for an excuse to break my vows," Jon replies bitterly. "Maybe I want to be Jon Stark so badly that I'll convince myself this mission serves the greater good." "You're the most honorable person I know," Sam says firmly. "If you decide to go, it will be for the right reasons. And if you decide to stay, that will be right too." That night, Jon stands atop the wall again, looking south toward a war he can barely imagine. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Robb leads armies in battles that will determine the future of the Seven Kingdoms. Somewhere across an ocean, a young queen commands dragons and dreams of home. The wind carries the scent of winter, sharp and clean and endless. Jon has spent his life preparing for the cold and darkness that comes from the north. But perhaps the greater darkness comes from the south, from the wars of men and the ambitions of kings. When the sun rises, Jon Snow walks to the Lord Commander's Solar and makes his choice. He will go. He will sail across the Narrow Sea as Jon Stark, envoy of the king in the north. He will find Daenerys Targaryen and offer her alliance against their common enemies. "I pray I do not live to regret this," Mormont says as he signs the release papers. "As do I, my lord," Jon replies. "As do I." The preparations take 3 days. Jon packs his few belongings, says goodbye to friends who may never see him again, and receives blessings from the Sept and the Godswood both. On the morning of his departure, the brothers of Castle Black gather in the yard to see him off. "May the old gods and the new protect you, Jon Stark," Aemon says, using the new name for the first time. Jon mounts his horse and rides south toward White Harbor, toward a ship that will carry him across the Narrow Sea to dragons and destiny. Behind him, the wall rises like a barrier between past and future. Ahead lies uncertainty, danger, and perhaps the alliance that will save the Seven Kingdoms. The bastard of Winterfell is dead. Jon Stark rides to meet the Dragon Queen. Chapter 3. The Dragon Queen's Court. The Great Pyramid of Ostapor, rises like a crimson mountain above the red brick streets of the conquered city. From the highest chamber, Daenerys Targaryen looks down upon the sprawling markets where slaves once stood in chains, and now free men and women work for wages. 3 months have passed since she took the city with fire and blood, and still the transformation feels like something from a dream. The throne room she has claimed was once the seat of the good masters, built to intimidate with its towering columns and golden reliefs depicting the glory of Giscari civilization. Now it serves a different purpose. Where once slavers counted their human property, Daenerys Stormborn holds court as breaker of chains and mother of dragons. Your Grace, Missandei approaches with careful steps, her brown eyes bright with intelligence. The young translator has become far more than a servant since Daenerys freed her from the masters. She serves as advisor, confidant, and bridge between the queen and her new subjects. A ship captain from Pentos requests an audience. He brings letters from across the narrow sea. Daenerys turns from the window, where she has been watching Drogon circle the pyramid's peak. Her largest dragon has grown considerably since hatching, his black scales gleaming like polished obsidian in the afternoon sun. Rhaegal and Viserion perch on the stone ledges below, their green and cream scales marking them as creatures from legend-made flesh. From across the narrow sea, Daenerys settles into the carved throne that still bears the scorch marks from Drogon's first visit to this chamber. From Westeros? Yes, Your Grace. The captain says the letters come from trading ships that dock in White Harbour and King's Landing. One bears the seal of a wolf. Daenerys feels her pulse quicken. A wolf seal. She knows that heraldry from the stories Viserys told her in their exile, though few of those tales were kind. The Starks of Winterfell, the northern lords who helped Robert Baratheon destroy her family and steal her father's throne. What could they possibly want with her? Bring the captain to me, she commands, and summon Ser Jorah. Within the hour, the throne room fills with the key members of her small but growing court. Ser Jorah Mormont stands at her right hand, his weathered face showing the wariness that has kept them both alive through years of exile. Missandei takes her place to the left, ready to translate should the need arise. A dozen unsullied stand guard along the walls, their bronze spears gleaming in the torchlight. The captain proves to be a nervous Pentoshi merchant named Casporio, his forked purple beard trembling as he approaches the throne. In his hands, he carries a leather satchel that contains what might be the first formal diplomatic correspondence Daenerys has received since claiming her crown. Your Grace, Casporio bows deeply. I bring word from the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. Letters pass to me by captains who trade in the northern ports. Show me, Daenerys commands. Casporio produces 2 scrolls. The first bears a seal of grey wax, stamped with a running wolf. The second shows the same device, but the wax is black, and the parchment bears signs of greater formality. Daenerys takes the formal letter first, her fingers tracing the unfamiliar heraldry. Missandei, she says, read this aloud for all to hear. The young woman breaks the seal with careful precision and unfolds the parchment. Her clear voice carries throughout the chamber as she reads words that have travelled halfway around the world to reach this moment. To her Grace, Daenerys of House Targaryen, rightful queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lady of the 7 Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, from Robb of House Stark, King in the North and Lord of Winterfell. Greetings. Ser Jorah steps forward slightly. Your Grace, perhaps we should examine this letter privately before— Continue, Missandei, Daenerys interrupts. The formal titles intrigue her. This northern king acknowledges her claim to the Iron Throne even as he styles himself a king. That suggests either respect or careful diplomacy. Your Grace, I write to you across the vast ocean that separates our lands, but I believe we share common cause despite the distance between us. The usurper Robert Baratheon is dead, and his heir Joffrey Baratheon sits the Iron Throne that rightfully belongs to your house. The same men who murdered your father and scattered your family now threaten mine. A murmur runs through the gathered court. Even the unsullied seem to stand straighter as the letter's purpose becomes clear. I offer alliance between the North and your forces. Let our enemies fear the joining of ice and fire against their tyranny. I propose to send an envoy to treat with you in person, a man of honor who carries my blood and my trust. His name is Jon Stark, and he comes bearing gifts worthy of your station and proposals worthy of your consideration. Missandei pauses and looks to Daenerys. The letter continues with formal diplomatic language, Your Grace, but those are the essential points. Daenerys leans back in her throne, her mind racing. An alliance, an acknowledgement of her rightful claim, an envoy coming to treat with her as an equal. After years of being dismissed as a beggar queen, someone finally offers her the respect due to her birthright. "What do you think, Sir Jorah?" she asks her most trusted advisor. Jorah's grey eyes are troubled. "I think caution is warranted, Your Grace. The Starks have no love for your house. Ned Stark served Robert faithfully and helped him hold the throne your brother sought to reclaim. Why would his son suddenly seek alliance with you?" "Because he needs me," Daenerys says simply. This letter speaks of common enemies and shared cause. Perhaps young King Robb faces the same choice I do. Find allies, or face destruction alone. "The North is far from the seat of power," Missandei observes. "In the old histories, the kings of winter ruled independently for thousands of years before Aegon the Conqueror united the Seven Kingdoms. Perhaps this Robb Stark seeks to restore that independence." Daenerys considers this. She knows little of northern politics beyond the broad strokes Viserys taught her, but she understands the desire for freedom. Her own quest to reclaim the Iron Throne is driven by the same impulse, the need to restore what was taken by force and held by treachery. "Tell me about this Jon Stark," she commands. "What does the letter say about him?" Missandei consults the parchment again. The king describes him as a man of honor, who carries Stark blood and royal trust. He offers no titles or lands, suggesting perhaps a younger brother or close cousin. The gifts mentioned include northern steel and furs, products of their land meant to demonstrate good faith. A younger brother, Jorah muses, sent on a dangerous mission across the narrow sea. Either King Robb trusts this man completely, or he considers him expendable. "Or both," Daenerys replies thoughtfully. She rises from her throne and moves to the great window again. Below, former slaves tend gardens where once stood slave markets. Children play in streets that knew only fear under the master's rule. She has built something here in Astapor, a foundation for the justice she promises to bring to the world. "Your Grace," one of her advisors speaks up, a former slave-turned-administrator named Krasnis. "What of Yunkai? Our scouts report the wise masters gather their forces and hired sellswords. Should we not focus on the immediate threat rather than distant northern kings?" Daenerys nods. The man speaks sense. Yunkai lies only a few days' march to the northwest, another slaver city that views her liberation of Astapor as a threat to their way of life. She cannot afford to be distracted by diplomatic ventures while enemies gather on her borders. Yet the offer intrigues her. For the first time since claiming her crown, Someone treats with her as a legitimate ruler rather than a pretender or nuisance. The respect inherent in the letter's language, the acknowledgement of her rightful claim, the promise of alliance between equals, these are things she has dreamed of but never dared expect. "When is this envoy expected to arrive?" she asks. Casporio clears his throat nervously. "The letters came with a trading fleet that departed White Harbor 2 moons ago, Your Grace. If the northern delegation follows the same route, they could arrive within the month." 2 moons to reach her, 1 moon until arrival. Time enough to consolidate her hold on Astapor, and perhaps even begin the campaign against Yunkai. Time to prepare for a diplomatic encounter that could change the balance of power across 2 continents. "Very well," Daenerys decides. "We will receive this Jon Stark when he arrives. Missandei, send word to the harbour masters. Any ship bearing northern heraldry is to be guided safely to port, and its occupants treated as honoured guests, not prisoners." "Your Grace," Jorah says quietly, "I still counsel caution. We know nothing of this man beyond his king's word. He could be an assassin, a spy, or simply a fool on a hopeless mission." "Then we will learn the truth of him when he arrives," Daenerys replies. "But we will not turn away the first offer of alliance I have received since claiming my throne. If this Jon Stark proves honourable, we may gain valuable allies in Westeros. If he proves false, we will deal with him, as we have dealt with all who threaten us." She moves to the throne's side, where Drogon often perches when he tires of flying. The dragon is absent now, hunting somewhere over the Giscari hills, but his presence is felt throughout the city. All of Astapor knows that their queen commands creatures from legend, and that knowledge shapes every interaction within these walls. "Prepare the lower chambers of the pyramid for guests," she continues. "I want quarters befitting foreign dignitaries, not prisoners. If we treat with the North as equals, we must demonstrate that equality in our hospitality." "And if the Yunkish attack while we host these northerners," Kraznys asks, "then our guests will learn firsthand why the Dragon Queen is feared throughout Slaver's Bay," Daenerys replies with a smile that carries more threat than warmth. "They will see how we deal with those who threaten the innocent." As the court disperses to carry out her commands, Daenerys remains at the window, watching the sun set over her conquered city. Somewhere across the narrow sea, a northern prince sails toward a meeting that neither of them can fully understand. She knows nothing of Jon Stark beyond his king's letter, nothing of his character or motivations, but she knows the weight of exile and the hunger for legitimacy, the desperate need for allies in a world that offers mostly enemies. Perhaps this northern envoy will prove to be another disappointment, another false promise in a life filled with betrayal and loss. Or perhaps he will be something else entirely. A bridge between 2 worlds, a link between ice and fire, a chance for the lonely Dragon Queen to find she is not quite as alone as she believed. The dragons circle overhead as darkness falls on Astapor, their shadows passing over a city transformed by conquest and will. In a moon's time, those same dragons will look down upon ships from the far north, and Daenerys Targaryen will face a choice that could reshape the known world. For now, she can only wait and prepare, trusting in her instincts and the strength of the dragons that have made her legend possible. The Game of Thrones reaches across oceans, and she is finally invited to play. Chapter 4. The Crossing of the Narrow Sea. The harbour at White Harbor stretches before them like a forest of masts and rigging, ships from across the known world bobbing at anchor in the grey northern waters. Jon Stark stands at the prow of the Merman's Daughter, watching the crew make final preparations for their journey across the narrow sea. The Manderley galley is a sturdy vessel, built for long voyages and dangerous waters, but even she seems small against the vastness of the ocean that awaits. "First time crossing the narrow sea, my lord?" Captain Robert Glover asks, joining John at the rail. The grizzled seaman has served House Manderley for 20 years, and his weathered face shows the marks of countless storms and battles. "First time sailing anywhere beyond the White Knife," John admits. The title still feels strange on his tongue. "My lord." John Stark. Names that carry weight and responsibility he is still learning to bear. Behind him, his escort makes ready for departure. 20 good men, as Robb promised. Sir Donal Locke and Sir Patrick Mallister lead the knights, both seasoned warriors who served Jon's father faithfully. The men-at-arms include Northmen from a dozen different houses, Stark loyalists, Umber fighters, Mormont veterans, each man hand-picked for this mission, each sworn to follow Jon Stark to the ends of the earth if necessary. "The crossing should take us 3 weeks, if the winds favor us," Captain Glover continues. "We'll make stops at Pentus and Tyrosh for supplies before the final push to Slaver's Bay. Dangerous waters once we pass the stepstones, but the merman's daughter has weathered worse." John nods, though his mind is less on the journey than on its purpose. Somewhere across that grey expanse, Daenerys Targaryen waits with her dragons and her army. Will she receive him as an ally? As a threat? The letter Robb sent offers alliance, but John knows that words on parchment mean little compared to the reality of face-to-face negotiation. "Cast off!" Captain Glover shouts, and the crew springs into action. Ropes are hauled, sails unfurled, and slowly the merman's daughter pulls away from the dock. John watches White Harbour shrink behind them, then turns to face the open sea and whatever awaits beyond the horizon. For the first week, the voyage proceeds smoothly. The autumn winds fill their sails and push them steadily eastward, across waters that seem to stretch forever in all directions. John spends his time learning the names and histories of his men, building the bonds of trust and respect that will be crucial if they face danger. Sir Donal tells stories of campaigns with Jon's father. Sir Patrick shares tactical wisdom learned in the Riverland battles. The common soldiers teach Jon dice games and sea shanties, slowly accepting their bastard-born commander as a true-born lord. But the narrow sea has other plans. The storm strikes on the 8th day, rising from the southern horizon like a wall of grey death. Captain Glover orders the sails shortened and the crew to secure everything that can be tied down, but even his experience cannot fully prepare them for the fury that follows. The merman's daughter bucks and rolls like a wild horse as waves the size of castle walls crash across her deck. Jon finds himself clinging to the rigging alongside his men, all of them soaked to the bone and fighting seasickness as the ship climbs mountainous swells only to plunge into valleys of churning water. "Hold fast!" Sir Donal shouts over the howling wind. "The ship will hold!" A massive wave crashes over the stern, sweeping 2 barrels and a coil of rope into the black water. For a terrifying moment, the ship seems to hang sideways against the storm's fury before righting herself with a groan of stressed timber. Jon has faced death before, but never like this, never so helpless against forces beyond any man's control. At Winterfell, he could fight with sword and strength. At the Wall, he could stand firm behind ice and stone. Here, there is nothing to fight except the sea itself, and the sea cares nothing for courage or skill. "My lord!" One of the younger men-at-arms, a boy named Torren from the mountain clans, loses his grip on the rail and slides toward the churning water. Without thinking, Jon lunges forward and catches the boy's wrist just as he reaches the ship's edge. "I have you!" Jon hauls Torrin back to safety, both of them gasping as another wave crashes over the deck. "Stay close to the mast!" The storm rages for 2 days, and a night before finally exhausting its fury against the endless sea. When calm returns, the merman's daughter limps onward with a cracked mainmast and half her provisions spoiled, but her crew intact and her mission unchanged. "You saved young Torrin's life," Sir Patrick observes as they survey the storm damage. "The men have taken notice." Jon says nothing, but he sees the truth in how his escort looks at him now. No longer the bastard boy they remember from Winterfell, but Jon Stark, who risked his own life to save one of theirs. Leadership, Jon realizes, is not just about giving orders. It is about proving yourself worthy of the trust others place in you. The real test comes 4 days later, as they approach the stepstones. "Sails on the horizon!" the lookout calls from the crow's nest. 3 ships, bearing down from the northeast. Captain Glover raises his spyglass and studies the distant vessels. His weathered face grows grim as he recognizes what he sees. "Pirates," he announces. "Saladhor Saan's men, by the look of their rigging. Fast ships and dangerous crews." "Can we outrun them?" Jon asks, joining the captain at the wheel. "Not with our damaged mast. They'll be on us within the hour." Glover looks to Jon with the respect due a ship's passenger and commander. "Your orders, my lord." The question hangs in the air like smoke from a forge. Jon has led men in training, given orders in practice. But this is real. Lives depend on his decision, including his own. Behind him, his escort waits to hear how their commander will meet this threat. "We fight," Jon decides. "Ready the men for battle." The pirates prove to be everything Captain Glover warned. 3 sleek galleys flying the red and gold banners of the stepstones converge on the merman's daughter, like wolves circling a wounded stag. Their crews shout in the bastard Valyrian of the eastern corsairs, brandishing curved swords and boarding axes that gleam in the afternoon sun. "Archers!" Jon commands, drawing the bastard sword that has served him faithfully since his days at Winterfell. "Pick your targets!" The first exchange comes at 50 yards. Northern longbows send a flight of arrows across the water, dropping several pirates before they can close for boarding. But the corsairs are veteran fighters, and they respond with crossbow bolts and throwing spears that force Jon's men to take cover behind the ship's rail. The largest pirate galley crashes into the merman's daughter's port side with a grinding of splintered wood and the screams of fighting men. Grappling hooks fly through the air, binding the ships together as corsairs stream across the gap with weapons raised and murder in their eyes. "For the North!" Sir Donald's war cry echoes across both ships as steel rings against steel. Jon finds himself face to face with a Lysane corsair whose purple hair is braided with golden rings. The man fights with a curved sword and main gauche, his technique polished by years of shipboard combat. But Jon has learned his swordplay from masters of Winterfell, and the bastard sword gives him reach and leverage the pirate cannot match. They circle each other on the blood-slicked deck as the battle rages around them. The corsair lunges with his curved blade, seeking Jon's heart, but the northern steel turns the blow aside. Jon's riposte opens a line of red across the man's sword arm, drawing first blood. "Northern dog!" the pirate snarls in accented common tongue. "You die far from home." "Then I die fighting," Jon replies, and presses his attack. The duel ends when Jon's sword takes the corsair through the chest, piercing mail and flesh to find the heart beneath. The man falls with a look of surprise, his weapons clattering to the deck as his life flows out in crimson streams. Around them, the tide of battle turns. Northern discipline and superior armor prove more than a match for pirate ferocity. Sir Patrick cuts down 2 corsairs with his warhammer. Torren, the boy John saved from the storm, plants an arrow in a pirate captain's eye at 20 paces. One by one, the surviving corsairs surrender or leap into the sea rather than face northern steel. "Victory, my lord," Sir Donald reports, his sword red to the hilt. 12 enemies dead, 3 captured. We lost 2 men, Garrett from House Dustin and old Willem the crossbowman. John nods grimly. 2 good men dead in his first real battle as John Stark. He will write letters to their families when they reach port, though no words can truly repay the debt he owes to their sacrifice. "Strip the pirate ships of anything useful, then set them adrift," he commands. "We honor our dead and sail on." That night, as the merman's daughter limps toward Pentos with her battle-scarred crew, John stands again at the prow and considers how much has changed since leaving White Harbor. He left the north as a bastard playing at lordship. He will reach Slavers Bay as John Stark, blooded in battle and proven in command. The lights of Pentos appear on the horizon 3 days later, a sprawling city of spires and domes that seems to rise from the sea like something from a dream. John has never seen anything like it, the size of King's Landing, but built in a completely different style, with bright colors and exotic architecture that speaks of wealth and distant cultures. "Welcome to the Free Cities," Captain Glover says with a wry smile. "Nothing quite prepares you for your first sight of them." The harbor bustles with activity even at this late hour. Ships from a dozen nations crowd the waterfront, their crews speaking in tongues John has never heard. Merchants in silk robes argue over prices, while slaves, for slavery still thrives here despite Daenerys Targaryen's distant example, carry cargo with bowed heads and branded faces. "Remember," John tells his men as they prepare to go ashore, "we are guests here, representing King Robb and the North. Show respect but take no insults. We are John Stark's men, and we carry ourselves accordingly." The next morning brings meetings with Pentoshi merchants who can arrange the overland journey to Slavers Bay. John's northern gold and letters of credit from House Manderley open doors that might otherwise remain closed, but the negotiations prove complex. The route through the Dothraki Sea is dangerous, requiring guides, guards, and tribute payments to various calls. The merchant princes of Pentos want assurances that their investment in this strange diplomatic mission will be repaid. Your Daenerys Stormborn has made enemies as well as admirers, explains Magister Illyrio Mopatis, an enormously fat man whose silk robes strain around his massive frame. The slavers of Yunkai and Meereen have placed bounties on any who aid her cause. You travel dangerous roads, young lord. The North has faced danger before, John replies calmly. We do not break faith with our allies because of threats. In the end, the arrangements are made. A caravan of 50 men, 20 northerners, 20 sellswords from the disputed lands, and 10 Dothraki guides will make the journey across the grasslands to Slavers Bay. The cost in gold is enormous, but John carries Robb's authority to spend whatever is necessary. They depart Pentos on a crisp autumn morning, following roads that lead ever eastward toward the rising sun. The countryside gradually gives way to the vast grasslands of the Dothraki Sea, an ocean of green that stretches to the horizon in all directions. Here, John truly understands how far he has traveled from the snow-covered forests of the north. The journey takes weeks. They face thunderstorms that turn the grassland to mud, attacks by wild Khalasar scouts who test their defenses, and the constant challenge of finding water in a land where rivers run far apart. But Jon's men adapt to each challenge, growing stronger and more confident with each day that passes. You have become quite the commander, Sir Patrick observes one evening, as they make camp beside a shallow stream. Your father would be proud. Jon looks around the campfire at faces weathered by wind and sun, men who have followed him across half the world on nothing more than faith in their cause. They call him Lord now without reservation, not because he was born to it, but because he has earned it through shared hardship and steady leadership. We all have, he replies. When we reach Astapor, we will stand before the Dragon Queen as equals, not supplicants. 3 days later, the red brick pyramids of Astapor appear in the distance like monuments to an ancient and alien civilization. Jon Stark and his northern escort have crossed the narrow sea, survived storms and pirates and the vast Dothraki grasslands. Now comes the true test, convincing a queen who commands dragons to ally herself with a king she has never met. There it is, Sir Donal says softly. The city of the Dragon Queen. Jon nods, his hand resting on his sword hilt as he contemplates the strange towers and exotic architecture that will soon either welcome them as friends or challenge them as enemies. The boy who left Winterfell as a bastard is gone. The young man who approaches Astapor is Jon Stark, heir to ancient kings, envoy of the North, and perhaps the key to an alliance that could reshape the known world. The Game of Thrones has brought him far from home, but the greatest moves are yet to be played. Chapter 5. The Meeting of Ice and Fire. The Great Pyramid of Astapor rises before them like a crimson mountain carved by the hands of gods. Jon Stark stands with his escort at the base of the ancient structure, craning his neck to see the summit where dragons circle in the morning sky. After weeks of travel across 2 continents, the moment he has journeyed so far to reach finally arrives. 7 hells, Sir Donal mutters under his breath. It's bigger than Winterfell and the Wall put together. The Northerners cluster together as Astapori guards in bronze-scale armor approach their party. The former slaves who now serve as Daenerys Targaryen soldiers move with discipline that speaks well of their queen's leadership, but their eyes hold the wariness of men who have learned to trust carefully. You are the northern delegation? The captain speaks accented common tongue, his words precise despite the foreign inflection. Her Grace awaits you in the throne room. You may bring 6 men as escort. Your weapons will be peace-bonded as a sign of respect, not disarmament. Jon nods his acceptance. He chooses Sir Donal and Sir Patrick as his knights, along with 4 steady men-at-arms who have proven themselves on the journey. The rest of his party will remain in the pyramid's lower chambers, honored guests, but not participants in the formal audience. The climb to the throne room takes them through corridors lined with hieroglyphs that tell stories of ancient Ghiskari glory. Slaves bearing refreshments and cool cloths wait at every landing, a courtesy that speaks of wealth and hospitality. Yet Jon notices that these servants wear no chains, and their eyes do not hold the broken look of those who have known the lash. Whatever else Daenerys Targaryen may be, she has clearly transformed this city from its slaving past. The Queen's throne room, the captain announces, as they reach a pair of massive bronze doors worked with dragons and lions locked in eternal combat. Present yourselves with the respect due to Daenerys, Stormborn of House Targaryen, the first of her name, Queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lady of the 7 Kingdoms, Protector of the Realm, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, Breaker of Chains, and Mother of Dragons. The doors swing open to reveal a chamber that takes Jon's breath away. Columns carved like dragon necks support a ceiling painted with scenes of Valyrian splendor. Torches burn in brackets shaped like dragon heads, casting dancing shadows across walls adorned with captured banners and weapons. And at the far end of the room, upon a throne carved from black stone, sits the most beautiful woman Jon has ever seen. Daenerys Targaryen possesses the silver-gold hair and violet eyes of old Valyria, but there is nothing soft or delicate about the young woman who regards them with cool assessment. She wears a simple gown of deep blue silk that somehow makes her appear more regal than any crown could manage. Her bare arms show the muscle earned through dragon riding and sword work, and her gaze holds the confidence of someone who has conquered cities and commanded armies. To her right stands a man Jon recognizes from descriptions, Sir Jorah Mormont, the exile knight whose letters helped arrange this meeting. The older man studies the Northerners with professional interest, his hand resting casually on his sword hilt. To the Queen's left, a young woman with dark skin and intelligent eyes watches the proceedings with quiet attention. "Approach," Daenerys commands, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. Jon leads his party forward, their boots echoing on marble floors inlaid with dragon designs in gold and silver. He stops the appropriate distance from the throne and performs the bow due to a foreign queen, respectful but not submissive, acknowledging her status while maintaining his own dignity as an envoy of the North. "Your Grace," Jon begins, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "I am Jon Stark, legitimized son of Lord Eddard Stark and brother to his Grace, Robb Stark, King in the North. I come before you as his envoy, bearing his greetings and his hopes for alliance between our houses." Daenerys studies him for a long moment, her violet eyes taking in every detail of his appearance and bearing. Jon feels as though she can see through to his very soul, weighing his worth with the practiced eye of a ruler who has learned to judge character quickly and accurately. "Jon Stark," she repeats, tasting the name. "I confess your arrival surprised me. The Starks have not been friends to my house in recent years. Lord Eddard served the usurper Robert faithfully, did he not?" "My father served the realm as he saw fit," Jon replies carefully. "He was a man of honor, who did what he believed was right. But honor does not always serve justice, and justice is what brings me before you now." "Justice?" Daenerys leans forward slightly, genuine interest flickering in her eyes. "Tell me of this justice you seek." Jon reaches into his cloak and produces the formal letter bearing Robb's seal, along with a smaller scroll listing the gifts his party has brought. "My brother offers alliance against our common enemies. The Lannisters murdered your father and scattered your family. They murdered mine as well, and now they seek to destroy all who oppose their tyranny." "The Lannisters," Daenerys says softly, and for a moment her composed mask slips to reveal the pain and anger beneath. "Yes, we share enemies in them. But tell me, Jon Stark, what does your king offer, beyond shared hatred of golden lions?" This is the moment Jon has prepared for throughout the long journey. The North commands 40,000 swords and an army seasoned by months of warfare. We control the Riverlands and threaten the Lannister homeland directly. Alliance with us would give you a foothold in Westeros without the need for conquest. And what does the North seek in return? Recognition of my brother's crown and the North's independence. Support against the Lannisters until they are defeated utterly. Trade agreements that will benefit both our peoples. Jon pauses, then adds the crucial element. And perhaps friendship between two young rulers who understand the burden of unwanted crowns. Something flickers across Daenerys' face at those words. Unwanted crowns. You speak as though neither your brother nor I sought the power we hold. "Did you seek it?" Jon asks boldly. "Or did it come to you through tragedy and necessity, as it came to Robb after our father's death?" Daenerys is quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against the arm of her throne. Around them, the court waits in tense silence as two young leaders size each other up across the vast divide of culture and experience. "You are not what I expected," she says finally. "Your letter spoke of northern honor and Stark integrity, but I expected someone older, more diplomatic, more like the southern lords who measure every word for political advantage." "Perhaps that is why King Robb chose me," Jon replies. "I am not trained in courtly games or political maneuvering. I speak plainly because I was raised to value truth over clever words." "Truth?" Daenerys smiles for the first time since they entered the chamber, and the expression transforms her face completely. A rare commodity in the halls of power. "Very well, Jon Stark. Let us speak truth to each other." She rises from her throne and descends the steps, her bare feet silent on the cold stone. As she approaches, Jon notices details that were invisible from a distance, the small scars on her hands that speak of dragon handling, the calluses that mark a swordswoman, the way she moves with unconscious grace despite her obvious strength. "Tell me," she says, stopping just outside of sword reach. "What is it like to be a bastard made legitimate? To go from having no name to carrying one of the most ancient in Westeros?" The question catches Jon off guard with its directness and personal nature. "How did you—" "Your bearing," Daenerys explains. "You carry yourself like a man still learning his place in the world. There is uncertainty beneath the confidence, as though you are playing a role you have not yet mastered. I recognize it because I have felt the same uncertainty myself." Jon considers whether to answer honestly or deflect with diplomatic evasion. Then he remembers his own advice about speaking truth rather than clever words. "It is strange," he admits. "All my life, I was Jon Snow, the bastard who sat at the edge of the high table but never truly belonged. Now I am Jon Stark, heir to Winterfell if my brother falls, and men call me Lord without question. Sometimes I feel like I am wearing clothes that do not quite fit. And yet you left the safety of the wall to sail across the world on a diplomatic mission that could end in failure or death. That speaks to more than mere obedience to a brother's command." "I came because the realm bleeds," Jon says simply, "because good people die while kings play their games of thrones. Because I believe my brother when he says alliance between North and Dragon could end this war sooner and save thousands of lives." Daenerys nods slowly, something like approval in her violet eyes. "You speak of protecting the innocent. Tell me, Jon Stark, what do you think of slavery?" The question hangs in the air like a blade poised to fall. Jon glances around the throne room, noting the former slaves who now serve as guards and administrators, the unsullied who have chosen to follow this young queen despite being given their freedom. "I think any man who claims to own another commits a crime against the gods and nature," Jon answers without hesitation. "No person should kneel except by choice. Even to queens and kings. Respect must be earned, not demanded. A crown is a burden of service, not a license for tyranny." "Your father would agree with such words." Ser Jorah speaks for the first time, his weathered face showing grudging approval. "Eddard Stark was many things, but he was no tyrant." Daenerys waves her hand dismissively. "I care little for the dead man's politics. I care about the character of the living one who stands before me." She circles Jon slowly, studying him like a commander evaluating a potential ally or threat. "You have traveled far to reach me, survived storms and pirates, and the Dothraki grasslands. Your men clearly respect you, despite your youth, and you speak with conviction about justice and protecting the innocent." Does this mean you will consider my brother's proposal? It means I will hear it fully. Daenerys returns to her throne, but does not sit, instead leaning against its arm in a gesture that makes her seem less remote and more accessible. Present your gifts and your brother's formal terms. Let us see what the North offers the dragons. Jon gestures to Ser Donnell, who steps forward with a wooden chest bound in iron. From King Robb Stark to Her Grace Daenerys Targaryen, Jon announces formally. Northern steel forged in the ancient way, furs from the wolves of the Wolfswood, and gold taken from Lannister baggage trains in honorable battle. As his men display the gifts, Jon watches Daenerys' reaction carefully. She examines the swords with the eye of someone who knows weapons, testing their balance and edge. She runs her fingers through the rich wolf pelts with obvious appreciation for their quality. But her expression remains neutral until she reaches the final item. "This is beautiful work," she says, lifting a silver direwolf pendant wrought with sapphires for eyes. Ancient northern craftsmanship. "It belonged to my father's sister, Lyanna Stark," Jon explains. "King Robert fought a war for her, though she died before he could save her. Robb sends it as a symbol of how precious things, once lost, can sometimes be recovered through alliance and friendship." Daenerys holds the pendant up to the light, watching the sapphires catch fire in the torchlight. "Lyanna Stark, I have heard the songs. She was said to be very beautiful. She was said to be many things. Beautiful, willful, brave. She died too young, before I could know her." Jon pauses, then adds quietly, "As did your brother Rhaegar, who some say loved her." A complex emotion flickers across Daenerys' face at the mention of her eldest brother. "You know the stories, then, of the knight who crowned a winter rose as queen of love and beauty, starting a war that destroyed 2 dynasties. I know that stories change in the telling, and that the truth is often more complicated than legends allow." "Truth," Daenerys repeats, weighing the word. "Yes, I think we understand each other on that score." She fastens the pendant around her neck, where it catches the light like captured starlight. "Very well, Jon Stark. I will consider your brother's proposal seriously. You and your men are welcome to remain as my guests while I deliberate." "How long might such deliberation require?" Jon asks. Daenerys smiles, and this time the expression holds genuine warmth rather than mere diplomatic courtesy. "Long enough for us to know each other better. Long enough to determine whether the wolves of Winterfell can truly run with the dragons of old Valyria." As if summoned by her words, a deep rumble echoes through the throne room. Through the great windows, Jon catches sight of black wings and gleaming scales as Drogon settles on the pyramid's outer wall. The dragon's golden eyes peer through the glass with unmistakable intelligence, studying the northern visitors with the same careful assessment as his mother. "Perhaps you would like to meet my children," Daenerys suggests, following Jon's gaze. "After all, if we are to be allies, you should know all my strengths." Jon nods, his heart racing with anticipation and fear. He has come so far to reach this moment, risked so much on the hope of alliance between ice and fire. Now, as the Dragon Queen leads him toward creatures from legend, he wonders if he has found salvation for his brother's cause or stepped into a dream from which he may never wake. The Game of Thrones has brought him to this place, this moment, this choice. Soon he will discover whether Jon Stark has what it takes to forge an alliance that could reshape the known world, or whether the bastard boy from Winterfell is doomed to become another cautionary tale told in the halls of power. But as Daenerys Targaryen smiles at him with genuine interest, her violet eyes bright with possibility, Jon allows himself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, ice and fire might learn to burn as one. Chapter 6. Fire and Ice Unite. The chambers Daenerys has provided for Jon overlook the training yards where unsullied practice their drills in perfect formation. From his window, he can see the entire city of Astapor spread below like a red brick maze, its streets bustling with the activity of a conquered city, learning to live free. 3 days have passed since his formal audience with the Dragon Queen, and each day brings new conversations that reveal more about the remarkable young woman who commands dragons and armies with equal skill. The transformation is astounding, Jon says, as Daenerys joins him on the balcony for their evening meal. She has taken to dining with him privately, away from the formality of court, and these quiet moments have become the foundation of their growing understanding. Astapor was built on suffering, Daenerys replies, settling into the chair across from him. Tonight she wears a simple dress of green silk that brings out the violet in her eyes, her silver hair braided with small bells that chime softly when she moves. Every brick was laid by slaves, every pyramid raised by the blood and sweat of those who knew only chains. Now those same hands build something new. Jon nods, thinking of his own experiences with justice and transformation. At the Wall, we took murderers and thieves and made them into defenders of the realm. Men can change when given purpose greater than themselves. You speak of the Night's Watch often, Daenerys observes, pouring wine for both of them. Do you miss it? The question gives Jon pause. He considers the black brothers he left behind, the sense of purpose that came from standing guard against the darkness. I miss the simplicity of it. The Watch had one duty: protect the realm. Here, in the Game of Thrones, every choice carries a dozen consequences. Yet you left that simplicity to serve your brother's cause. And you left the simplicity of exile to reclaim your birthright. We both chose the harder path. Daenerys smiles at this, raising her cup in a small toast, to hard choices and uncertain roads. They drink, and the conversation turns to their respective journeys. Jon tells her about Winterfell's ancient crypts and the kings of winter who sleep there. He describes the Wall in all its frozen majesty, the haunted forest beyond, and the strange honor that binds men sworn to serve until death. Daenerys listens with genuine fascination, asking questions about the North's customs and the people who bend knee to House Stark. In return, she shares stories of her exile, the years of wandering from city to city, with only Viserys for family. She speaks of learning to command the Dothraki, of the funeral pyre where her dragons hatched, of the moment she realized that being a queen meant more than wearing a crown. I never wanted to rule, she admits as the stars emerge overhead. I wanted to go home, but home was taken from me before I was old enough to remember it. So I had to build a new one. Robb never wanted to be king either, Jon says softly. He was the second son, content to follow our father and serve the North. But when Joffrey took father's head, the choice was made for him. As it was for me when my brother died. As it was for you when King Robb legitimized you and sent you across the world. Daenerys leans forward slightly, her violet eyes intense in the torchlight. Do you ever wonder what we might have been if the world had not demanded so much of us? Jon meets her gaze, feeling the pull of attraction that has grown stronger with each passing day. Perhaps just Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, with no crowns to bear and no armies to lead. Would you have liked that life? Some days, yes. But then I think of all the people who depend on us, and I remember why we carry these burdens. Jon sets down his cup and stands, moving to the balcony's edge, where he can see the dragons roosting on the pyramid's outer walls. "Your children have been watching me." Daenerys joins him at the railing, close enough that he can smell the faint scent of jasmine in her hair. "They are curious about you. Dragons are intelligent creatures, and they sense things that escape human notice." "What do they sense about me?" "Perhaps you should ask them yourself." Daenerys places 2 fingers to her lips and whistles a complex melody that carries across the night air. Within moments, the sound of massive wings fills the darkness as Drogon descends to the balcony. The black dragon settles on the stone railing with surprising grace for a creature already the size of a small horse. His scales gleam like polished obsidian, and his golden eyes regard Jon with unmistakable intelligence. This close, Jon can feel the heat radiating from the dragon's body, can see the careful way Drogon positions himself to avoid accidentally striking anyone with his claws or tail. "He's magnificent," Jon breathes, overcome by the reality of standing so close to a living legend. "He is my firstborn," Daenerys says, with obvious pride and affection. "Drogon, this is Jon Stark. He comes from the land of ice and wolves." The dragon tilts his head, studying Jon with an intensity that makes the young northerner feel as though his very soul is being weighed. Then, to Jon's amazement, Drogon extends his neck, bringing his massive head within arm's reach. "He wants you to touch him," Daenerys says softly. "Dragons choose whom they trust. This is his choice, not mine." Jon extends his hand slowly, carefully, until his fingers make contact with the warm scales of Drogon's snout. The sensation is unlike anything he has ever experienced, like touching living stone heated by forge fire, with an awareness behind it that speaks of intelligence and power beyond human comprehension. Drogon rumbles deep in his chest, a sound that might be contentment, and presses slightly into Jon's touch. For a moment, man and dragon regard each other in perfect understanding. 2 creatures bred for different worlds, but finding common ground in this impossible meeting. "Extraordinary," Daenerys whispers, her voice filled with wonder. "He has never accepted a stranger so readily." "Perhaps he knows that we serve the same cause," Jon suggests, still amazed by the dragon's acceptance. Or perhaps he senses something else entirely. Daenerys moves closer, her hand joining Jon's on Drogon's scales. "Dragons are creatures of magic, Jon. They see truths that mortal eyes miss." Their hands touch on the dragon's warm hide, and Jon feels a jolt of awareness that has nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the remarkable woman standing beside him. Daenerys looks up at him, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight, and for a moment the world narrows to just the 2 of them and the dragon who brought them together. The spell is broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. Ser Jorah emerges from the pyramid's interior, his weathered face showing disapproval as he takes in the intimate scene before him. "Your Grace," he says with stiff formality. "Forgive the interruption, but there are reports from our scouts. The Yunkish have begun massing forces at the city gates." Daenerys steps back from Jon, immediately shifting from woman to queen. "How many?" "Perhaps 3,000 soldiers, plus sellsword companies from the disputed lands. They demand that we release the Astapori slaves and restore the old masters to power." Jon sees the steel enter Daenerys' expression, the hardening that comes when she shifts from private moments to public duty. "Summon the council. We will discuss this threat properly." Drogon, sensing the change in mood, launches himself from the balcony with a powerful sweep of his wings. The great dragon circles the pyramid once before settling on a higher perch, his eyes glowing like golden stars in the darkness. An hour later, they gather in Daenerys' war room, a circular chamber lined with maps and tactical charts. Jon stands with his northern advisors, while Daenerys presides with Jorah, Missandei, and several Astapori freedmen who serve as her intelligence sources. The atmosphere is tense, charged with the knowledge that decisions made here could determine the fate of two continents. The immediate threat is clear, Jorah begins, pointing to markers on the map. Yunkai cannot allow Astapor's example to spread. If slaves throughout Slavers' Bay believe they can win freedom, the entire economy of the region collapses. Good, Daenerys says firmly. Let it collapse. Let every chain in the world be broken. Your Grace, one of the Astapori advisors interjects carefully. Our forces number barely 2,000 unsullied, plus perhaps 1,000 freedmen with minimal training. The Yunkish outnumber us significantly. Jon studies the map, applying the tactical lessons learned from Robb's campaigns in the Riverlands. Numbers matter, but so do dragons. How do the Yunkish plan to counter aerial attack? Crossbows and scorpion engines, Jorah replies grimly. They've been preparing for this possibility since Astapor fell. Then we don't fight the battle they expect, Jon suggests. In the north, we learned that winter favors the prepared. If the Yunkish want a siege, we give them something else entirely. Daenerys looks at him with interest. What do you propose? A two-front war. Your Grace fights the immediate threat here, while my king opens a second front in Westeros. Force the Lannisters to divide their attention between multiple enemies. Ser Jorah's expression darkens. That requires enormous coordination across vast distances. A single mistake could doom both campaigns. Or a single success could topple both our enemies, Jon counters. The Lannisters grow stronger while we debate. Each day we delay allows them to consolidate power and prepare for threats they know are coming. Daenerys stands and moves to the great map of the known world that dominates one wall. Her finger traces the narrow sea between Slavers' Bay and Westeros, the vast distance that separates her from her birthright. You speak sense, she says finally. But such a strategy requires perfect trust between allies. I would be risking everything on your brother's word and your own assessment of his character. As he would be risking everything on yours, Jon replies. But consider the alternative. Fight our enemies separately, and we may win individual battles while losing the larger war. Unite our causes, and we become strong enough to end this conflict decisively. The room falls silent as everyone contemplates the magnitude of what Jon proposes. An alliance spanning continents, coordinated campaigns across impossible distances, the fate of millions hanging on the decisions of two young rulers who have never met. There is another consideration, Missandei says softly. The symbolism of such an alliance. The return of House Targaryen, supported by the ancient honor of House Stark. It would resonate throughout Westeros in ways that pure conquest could not achieve. Daenerys nods slowly. The right of dragons backed by the integrity of wolves. Yes, I see the power in that image. Jorah steps forward, his voice tight with concern. Your Grace, I must counsel extreme caution. We know little of this northern king beyond his envoy's word. To commit our forces based on promises and hopes is exactly what leadership requires, Daenerys interrupts, her tone carrying the authority of absolute rule. Ser Jorah, you have served me faithfully, but you counsel the caution of a defeated exile. I am no longer the beggar princess who fled from city to city. I am Daenerys Stormborn, and I make my own destiny. The rebuke stings, and Jon sees something ugly flicker across Jorah's face before the older knight masters his expression. Here is a complication he had not anticipated. the jealousy of a man who has served faithfully, but finds himself displaced in his queen's affections. "Very well," Daenerys continues, turning back to Jon. "I accept your brother's alliance. We will coordinate our campaigns to maximum effect. But I have conditions." "Name them," Jon says. "First, when I sail for Westeros, you sail with me. I want the North's envoy at my side when I reclaim my father's throne." Jon nods. "Agreed." "Second, any territory we liberate together will be governed according to principles we both accept. No slavery, no tyranny, justice for all, regardless of birth or station." My brother would agree to those terms gladly. "Third, when this war is won, the alliance continues. The North and the restored Targaryen kingdom will stand together against whatever threats may come." Jon extends his hand in the northern fashion. "I swear it by the old gods and the new." Daenerys takes his hand in both of hers, her touch warm and sure. "Then let us write letters that will reshape the world. Your brother will have his dragons, and I will have my wolves." As the council disperses to begin preparations for the most ambitious military campaign in generations, Jon remains behind with Daenerys in the war room. Maps surround them, like promises of conquest and liberation. But all Jon can focus on is the remarkable woman who has just committed her forces and her future to an alliance built on trust and shared purpose. "Are you certain about this?" he asks softly. "I am certain of you," she replies, stepping closer. "Whatever else happens, I believe Jon Stark will keep his word. And I believe Daenerys Targaryen will change the world." Outside, the dragons roar their approval as their mother makes ready for war. Inside the pyramid, two young rulers plan an alliance that will either save the Seven Kingdoms or burn them all to ash. But in this moment, surrounded by maps and dreams of justice, Jon and Daenerys allow themselves to believe that ice and fire can indeed burn as one. The Game of Thrones has brought them together across impossible distances. Now they must prove worthy of the trust they have placed in each other, and in the alliance that could determine the fate of the known world. Chapter 7. The Dragon's Flight. The preparations for departure begin at dawn, with unsullied officers marshalling their companies in the great courtyard of the pyramid. Daenerys stands at her window, watching the organized chaos below, her mind already turning toward Westeros and the throne that awaits her there. Ships from Pentos and Volantis crowd the harbor, their captains eager for the gold that will carry the mother of dragons across the narrow sea. 3 weeks have passed since she agreed to Jon's alliance, and every day has brought new challenges. Provisions must be gathered, ships hired, routes planned across dangerous waters. The logistics of moving an army halfway around the world prove daunting, even for someone who has conquered cities and commanded dragons. "Your Grace," Ser Jorah enters her chambers with his customary formal bow. "The fleet captains are gathered in the war room. They request your presence to discuss the final details of our departure." Daenerys turns from the window, noting the tension in her oldest advisor's face. Jorah has grown increasingly distant since Jon's arrival, his counsel more cautious and his manner more formal. She knows he disapproves of the alliance, but his loyalty has never wavered before. "Before we join them," she says carefully, "I want to speak with you privately. Your opposition to this alliance troubles me, Jorah. You have served me faithfully since Pentos, but lately you seem to question every decision I make." Jorah's weathered face shows a flash of pain before he masters his expression. "I question nothing, Your Grace. I simply counsel caution when dealing with strangers who promise much and risk little. Jon Stark has risked everything to come here. His brother has legitimized him and sent him across the world on our word alone. How is that risking little? Because words are wind, your grace. Kings make promises they cannot keep, and envoys speak with authority they do not possess. How do we know this northern alliance is real? How do we know we will not sail to Westeros, only to find ourselves abandoned by fair-weather friends? The questions hang between them like accusations, and Daenerys feels a chill that has nothing to do with the morning air. You speak as though you know something I do not. Jorah hesitates, then moves to her desk where a leather portfolio lies among her correspondence. Perhaps I do. These arrived with the morning's ravens. He produces several scrolls, their seals already broken. Daenerys recognizes the paper and ink immediately. Correspondence that should have come to her first, opened by someone without authority to do so. You opened my private correspondence? Her voice carries a dangerous edge that makes Jorah step backward. I opened letters addressed to me, your grace. Letters I thought you should see. Daenerys takes the scrolls with hands that tremble slightly with anger. The first bears no seal, but the handwriting makes her blood turn to ice. She has seen this script before, in reports and intelligence summaries from her earliest days in exile, from Lord Varys, Master of Whisperers, to King Joffrey Baratheon, Jorah says quietly. He writes to inform me that my pardon has been approved, contingent on continued intelligence about your movements and intentions. The words blur before Daenerys' eyes as the full weight of betrayal crashes over her. Jorah Mormont, her first protector, her most trusted advisor, the man who saved her life 12 times over, has been spying for her enemies since the beginning. How long? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Since before Pentos, since your brother first spoke of reclaiming the throne. Varys offered me a royal pardon in exchange for information about Targaryen activities in exile. And you accepted. I was a disgraced knight with nothing to lose and everything to gain. I needed that pardon, Daenerys. I needed to go home. The use of her name rather than her title cuts like a blade. Daenerys sets the letters aside with careful precision, her mind racing through years of conversations and decisions, wondering how much intelligence has flowed to King's Landing through the man she trusted most. Did you tell them about Jon? About the alliance? No. The word comes quickly, desperately. I swear to you, I sent no word about the northern envoy or your plans to support his brother's cause. That intelligence could destroy everything we have built here. Everything we have built? Daenerys laughs, but the sound holds no humor. What have we built, Jorah? What alliance can survive when it is founded on lies and betrayal? The door opens to admit Jon, flanked by Sir Donal and Missandei. They enter expecting a routine meeting, but stop short when they see the tension crackling between Queen and Knight. Your Grace, Jon says carefully. If this is a poor time... No, Daenerys replies, her eyes never leaving Jorah's face. This concerns the alliance as much as anything else. Lord Stark, I present to you Sir Jorah Mormont, loyal knight of House Targaryen and faithful correspondent of Lord Varys, spy master to our enemies. The words hit the chamber like thunderbolts. Jon's face hardens as he processes the implications, while Sir Donel's hand moves instinctively to his sword hilt. Only Missandei maintains her composure, though her dark eyes show deep concern. That's not possible, Jon says slowly. Jorah Mormont is exiled from Westeros for selling poachers into slavery. Why would he serve the crown that banished him? For a pardon, Jorah replies, his voice thick with shame. For the chance to return to Bear Island and reclaim my family's honor. Honor! Daenerys' voice rises with fury. You speak to me of honor while admitting to years of treachery. How many of my plans have you betrayed? How many of my supporters have died because of intelligence you provided? I never betrayed anything that would harm you, Jorah insists. The information I sent was carefully chosen to maintain my position without compromising your safety. You chose what to betray? Daenerys stands, her small frame somehow radiating power and menace. You decided which of my secrets were safe to sell? How dare you make that choice for me? Jon steps forward, his voice carefully measured. Your Grace, may I see the correspondence? Daenerys hands him the letters, watching as he reads them with the careful attention of someone trained to evaluate intelligence reports. His expression grows grimmer with each page. These are recent, he observes. The dates suggest ongoing communication well after your conquest of Astapor. Yes, Jorah admits. Varys has been pressing for information about your dragons, your army, your intentions toward Westeros. I have told him nothing of value, but you have told him something, Jon finishes, enough to maintain your credibility as a source. Daenerys feels the rage building in her chest like dragonfire, hot and consuming. Get out! Get out of my sight before I have you fed to Drogon. Your Grace, please! Get out! The command emerges with such force that the windows rattle in their frames. Jorah bows stiffly and withdraws, leaving behind a silence heavy with betrayal and broken trust. Daenerys sinks into her chair, suddenly feeling every year of exile and hardship that has brought her to this moment. I'm sorry, Jon says quietly. I know he meant much to you. He was the first person to believe in me as more than Viserys' sister, Daenerys replies, staring at the letters that have shattered so much. When I had nothing, he gave me protection and counsel. Now I learn it was all built on lies. Missandei moves to her side with quiet grace. Your Grace, this does not have to destroy everything. The alliance with the North stands regardless of Ser Jorah's betrayals. Does it? Daenerys looks up at Jon with eyes bright with unshed tears. How can you trust me when my closest advisor has been feeding information to our enemies? How can we plan campaigns when our very counsels may be compromised? Jon considers this carefully before answering. Because you discovered the betrayal and chose to expose it rather than hide it. Because you value truth over comfortable lies. And because Jorah Mormont's failures do not diminish your achievements. Pretty words, Daenerys says bitterly. But words are wind, as Jorah reminded me. How do I know you won't abandon this alliance when you discover it's more complicated than you expected? Because I gave you my word, Jon replies simply. Because my brother gave his word. Because the North does not break faith with its allies, no matter what difficulties arise. The certainty in his voice steadies her, and Daenerys allows herself to hope that perhaps not all trust has been shattered by this revelation. But even as she draws strength from Jon's support, another crisis emerges. Your Grace, one of her Astapori advisors enters with obvious reluctance. Forgive the interruption, but there are citizens gathered in the plaza below. They request an audience. Through the window, Daenerys can see the crowd that has assembled, hundreds of former slaves and their families, many carrying the tools of their new trades, all looking up at the pyramid with expressions of desperate hope. What do they want? She asks, though she suspects she already knows the answer. They have heard rumors that you plan to leave Astapor, Your Grace. They beg you not to abandon them to face the Yunkish alone. The words hit like physical blows. Daenerys closes her eyes, seeing in her mind the choice that has been building since she agreed to Jon's alliance. She can lead her armies to Westeros and reclaim her birthright, or she can remain in Slaver's Bay and protect the people who have come to depend on her. She cannot do both. "What would you do?" she asks Jon suddenly. "If you had to choose between personal ambition and duty to those who trusted you." Jon looks out at the crowd below, then back at her with understanding in his grey eyes. "I would try to find a third option, one that serves both duty and honor. And if no such option existed, then I would choose duty. Always duty." Daenerys nods slowly, the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders like a familiar cloak. "Missandei, summon the council, all of them. Northern advisors, Unsullied commanders, Astapori representatives. We need to find that third option." The meeting that follows tests everyone's wisdom and patience. Maps cover every surface as they debate garrison strengths and defensive positions. The Unsullied commanders argue for taking their full strength to Westeros. The Astapori representatives beg for protection against Yunkish aggression. Jon's advisors worry about dividing their forces before the crucial campaign. "We cannot hold Astapor with a skeleton force," Sir Donal argues. "The Yunkish will see weakness and attack immediately. But we cannot conquer Westeros with half an army, either," counters Grey Worm, the Unsullied commander. "The Lannisters are strong. We need every spear." It is Missandei who suggests the compromise that might save everything. "What if we leave enough forces to hold Astapor while using our departure as a strategic deception? Let the Yunkish think we have abandoned the city, then reveal our strength when they attack." Daenerys seizes on the idea immediately. A garrison of 1,000 Unsullied, hidden in the pyramid's lower levels. To outside observers, Astapor appears defenseless. But when the Yunkish attack, they face professional soldiers fighting from prepared positions. Jon finishes. "It could work." "It has to work," Daenerys declares. "Because I will not abandon the people who trusted me, and I will not break faith with allies who risked everything to reach me." The preparations take on new urgency as they implement the deception. Selected Unsullied will remain behind in secret while the majority prepares for the journey to Westeros. Supplies are moved to hidden caches, defensive positions prepared, and communication networks established. "You realize this complicates everything," Jon observes as they watch ships being loaded in the harbor below. "Divided forces, hidden garrisons, enemies who think us weaker than we are." "The alternative is either abandoning our allies or breaking our word," Daenerys replies. "Neither option serves honor." "No," Jon agrees. "But the path we have chosen will test us both. Are you ready for that test?" Daenerys looks out at the ships that will carry them across the narrow sea, then up at the dragons circling overhead. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion have grown larger in recent weeks, their wings casting shadows that promise fire and conquest. She thinks of the Iron Throne that awaits her, the justice she plans to bring to Westeros, the alliance that could reshape the known world. "I am ready," she says with quiet certainty. "Are you?" Jon nods, his hand moving to the sword at his hip. "I am ready to serve the alliance we have forged, ready to see justice done, ready to help you reclaim what was stolen from your family." "Then let us begin," Daenerys declares. "Let the ships be loaded and the dragons fed. Tomorrow we sail for Dragonstone, and the real war begins." That night, as Astapor settles into an uneasy calm, Daenerys stands once more at her window, overlooking the city she has transformed. Former slaves work by torchlight to load the ships, their faces showing determination rather than fear. They trust her to protect them, trust her to return if needed, trust her to balance their safety against the greater good. The betrayal of Jorah still stings, but it has also clarified something important. Trust must be earned and proven through actions, not merely claimed through words. Jon Stark has proven himself worthy of trust. Now she must prove herself worthy of the faith he and his brother have placed in her. The dragons roar in the distance, as if sensing her thoughts, and Daenerys allows herself a small smile. Whatever challenges await across the narrow sea, she will face them with fire and blood, with honor and justice, with allies who have proven themselves true. The Game of Thrones calls her home at last, and this time she will not be denied. Chapter 8. The Return of the Dragons. Dragonstone rises from the grey waters of Blackwater Bay, like a fortress carved by gods from living stone. The ancient Valyrian stronghold looms before the Targaryen fleet as dawn breaks over the narrow sea, its dragon-shaped towers and grotesque gargoyles unchanged since the conquest 3 centuries past. Daenerys stands at the prow of her flagship, watching her ancestral seat grow larger with each passing moment, and feels the weight of history settling on her shoulders like a crown. "It's exactly as the songs described," Jon says, joining her at the rail. The journey across the narrow sea has weathered both of them, weeks of storms and uncertain waters that tested even the most experienced captains. But now, as Westeros spreads before them, the hardships of the crossing seem like distant memories. "My brother Viserys used to tell me stories of Dragonstone," Daenerys replies, her violet eyes fixed on the approaching castle. "He said it was the last place our family ruled before Robert's rebellion drove us into exile. The last place dragons called home before they died out completely." The irony is not lost on either of them. Above their heads, Drogon circles the castle towers with powerful wing beats, his black scales gleaming in the morning light. Behind him, Rhaegal and Viserion follow their brother in a display of aerial grace that would have been impossible to imagine just months before. For the first time in more than a century, dragons soar over Westeros, and the sight sends ripples of awe through both the Targaryen fleet and the few fishing vessels that witness their approach. "Signal the landing parties," Daenerys commands, her voice carrying the authority of a queen returning home. "We take Dragonstone." The assault proves unnecessary. The castle's small garrison of Baratheon loyalists surrenders without resistance when 3 dragons land in the main courtyard and roar their challenge to the ancient stones. Within an hour of landing, Daenerys Targaryen sits in the throne room where her ancestors once held court, the carved dragon throne finally occupied by a rightful heir. "Your Grace," Sir Donal approaches with a leather message tube bearing the direwolf seal of House Stark. "Ravens from Riverrun. King Robb responds to our letters." Jon breaks the seal with eager hands, his grey eyes scanning the parchment quickly before a smile breaks across his weathered face. He's moving. 40,000 Northern and Riverland swords are marching south from Riverrun. Robb says he can be at the gates of King's Landing within the fortnight if we coordinate our attack. Daenerys nods with satisfaction. The plan they crafted in Astapor is finally becoming reality. 3 armies will converge on the capital. Robb's forces from the north, Stannis Baratheon's fleet from the east, and her own dragons and Unsullied from the south. The Lannisters will face enemies on all sides with nowhere to retreat. "What of Stannis?" she asks. "Does your brother mention the would-be king?" "Stannis has agreed to the alliance, though reluctantly. Apparently your dragons provide a convincing argument for cooperation." Jon sets the letter aside and moves to the great map that dominates one wall of the chamber. Robb suggests we let Stannis assault the harbour while we attack from Blackwater Bay. Our dragons can support both assaults while staying clear of the Scorpion engines on the walls. Sound strategy, and afterward? Afterward, we settle the question of crowns and kingdoms. But first, we must win the battle. The next few days pass in intensive preparation. Dragonstone proves to be everything Daenerys could have hoped for in an ancestral seat. The castle's ancient Valyrian construction feels familiar despite her having never seen it before, as though the dragon blood in her veins recognizes the stone and steel her forefathers shaped with fire and magic. In the castle's depths, they discover chambers filled with dragon glass weapons and ancient tomes written in High Valyrian. Missandei spends hours translating scroll after scroll, revealing tactical knowledge and historical accounts that will prove invaluable in the coming battle. "Listen to this," she says one evening as they gather in the war room. A tactical manual written by Aegon the Conqueror himself. "Dragons are creatures of the sky, but their true power lies in terror. One dragon over the enemy's rear will cause more panic than 10,000 swords at his front." Wise words, Jon observes, studying the battle plans they have drawn and redrawn a dozen times. But Aegon never faced wildfire and scorpion engines designed specifically to kill dragons. No, but he faced armies 10 times larger than anything we will encounter, Daenerys counters. And he won every battle through superior tactics and the intelligent use of his advantages. Outside, a raven calls from the rookery, its harsh cry echoing through the castle's corridors. Jon rises to receive the message, but his expression darkens as he reads the contents. "Bad news?" Daenerys asks. "Word from King's Landing. Our arrival has not gone unnoticed." Jon hands her the parchment, sent by one of Robb's agents in the capital. Tywin Lannister has recalled his forces from Harrenhal. He's racing south to defend the city. Daenerys reads the intelligence report quickly, noting details about troop movements and defensive preparations. 20,000 men, plus the city watch and whatever sellswords they can hire. Formidable, but not insurmountable. There's more. They're moving wildfire to the Red Keep and the Sept of Baelor. Cersei apparently plans to burn the city rather than see it fall. The words hang in the air like a curse. Daenerys thinks of Astapor and the former slaves who trusted her to protect them from their former masters. Now King's Landing holds hundreds of thousands of innocents who could burn if Cersei Lannister chooses madness over surrender. "We cannot allow that," she says firmly. "Whatever else happens, the innocent must be protected." Agreed. But how do we take a city when the defenders are prepared to destroy it rather than lose it? It is Missandei who provides the answer, looking up from yet another ancient tome. Speed and precision. According to these tactical guides, dragons are most effective in quick strikes that eliminate key targets before the enemy can respond. If we can neutralize the wildfire threat and capture the royal family before they can give the order to burn the city. A surgical strike rather than a siege, Jon finishes. It could work, but the timing must be perfect. Over the following days, ravens fly constantly between Dragonstone and Riverrun as the final details are coordinated. Robb's march continues ahead of schedule, his army making good time on the King's Road. Stannis' fleet has left Dragonstone's secondary harbour and sails for King's Landing's main entrance. Everything depends on precise timing and flawless execution. Meanwhile, news of the dragon's return spreads throughout the Seven Kingdoms like wildfire. Ravens carry word to every great house and minor lord, every sept and holdfast, every market town and fishing village. After more than a century of absence, the beasts of legend have returned to Westeros, and with them comes the last scion of the Dragon Kings. The psychological impact alone is worth an army, Jon observes, as they watch the latest flock of ravens departing with messages for potential allies. Half the realm will remember the stories their grandfathers told about dragonfire and Targaryen power. And the other half will remember Robert's rebellion and the Mad King's crimes, Daenerys counters. Fear can work for us or against us, depending on how we wield it. Then we must be careful to appear as liberators rather than conquerors. The songs must tell of justice restored, not vengeance taken. That evening, as they make final preparations for departure, Daenerys climbs to the castle's highest tower, where her dragons have made their roost. Drogon lifts his great head as she approaches, his golden eyes reflecting the torchlight like molten metal. "Tomorrow we fly to war," she tells him softly, running her hand along his warm scales. "Tomorrow we reclaim what was stolen from our family." The dragon rumbles deep in his chest, a sound that might be agreement or simply contentment at his mother's touch. Below them, the castle courtyard bustles with activity as soldiers make ready for battle and ships prepare for the final assault. Jon appears at the top of the stairs, his northern sword gleaming at his side. "The fleet is ready. Robb's latest raven confirms he will reach King's Landing by dawn tomorrow. Stannis reports his ships are in position." "Then it is time." Daenerys turns from her dragon to face the man who has become her partner in this grand alliance. "Are you ready to help me win back my father's throne?" "I am ready to help you bring justice to the Seven Kingdoms," Jon replies. "Ready to see the Lannisters pay for their crimes. Ready to build something better from the ashes of their tyranny." Daenerys nods, feeling the truth of his words in her bones. This is not merely about reclaiming a throne or avenging past wrongs. This is about creating a better world for the millions who suffer under the rule of those who take power through violence and hold it through fear. "Then let us begin," she declares. "Let the dragons fly to war, and let all the realm tremble at our approach." The next morning dawns clear and cold, with a bitter wind from the north that fills the sails of the Targaryen fleet as it departs Dragonstone for the final time. Behind them, the ancient castle stands empty once more, its purpose fulfilled in preparing the Dragon Queen for her return. Above the ships, 3 dragons spread their wings and catch the wind, their shadows racing across the grey waters of Blackwater Bay. Drogon leads his siblings in a spiral climb that carries them high above the masts and rigging, their roars echoing across the water like the horn calls of some primordial hunt. On the deck of the flagship, Daenerys Targaryen adjusts the crown her ancestors wore when they conquered Westeros 300 years before. Beside her, Jon Stark checks his weapons and armor, preparing for the battle that will determine whether their alliance succeeds or fails in fire and blood. "King's Landing lies just beyond that point," Jon says, indicating the distant shoreline where the smoke of a great city rises into the morning air. "Within hours we will know whether this gamble was worth the risk." "It will be," Daenerys replies, with the certainty of someone who has already lost everything and refuses to lose again. "We fight for justice, for the innocent, for a better world. How can we fail when our cause is just?" The dragons roar overhead, as if in agreement, and the fleet sails onward toward destiny. Behind them lie the graves of ancient kings and the memories of a dynasty brought low by rebellion and betrayal. Ahead lies either triumph or tragedy, victory or death, the restoration of the Targaryen line or its final extinction. But as Daenerys watches King's Landing grow larger on the horizon, she allows herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, fire and blood can indeed bring justice to a world that has known too little of it. The Game of Thrones reaches its climax at last, and the dragons have returned to claim their birthright. The war for Westeros begins today. Chapter 9. The Battle for King's Landing. Dawn breaks over King's Landing with the sound of dragons roaring above the Red Keep. 3 shapes blot out the rising sun as Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion circle the ancient fortress like harbingers of the apocalypse. Below them, the greatest city in Westeros stirs uneasily as its citizens wake to the sight that has haunted their nightmares for generations. Daenerys Targaryen sits astride Drogon's massive back, her silver hair whipping in the wind as she surveys the target of her ancestors' conquest. The Iron Throne waits somewhere beneath those red stone towers, the seat of power stolen from her family 18 years ago. Today she will reclaim it with fire and blood. Remember, she calls to her other dragons, though they need no reminder of their purpose. The Red Keep first. Disable their defenses. Protect the innocent. Drogon banks sharply and dives toward the castle's highest tower, his shadow racing across the courtyard as soldiers scatter like ants below. The first gout of dragonfire strikes a scorpion engine mounted on the battlements, melting bronze and iron into slag in seconds. Screams echo from the walls as the defenders realize that their preparations mean nothing against the fury of living dragons. From the King's Gate, the sound of war horns echoes across the city. Robb Stark's army appears on the horizon like a tide of steel and direwolf banners, 40,000 northern and riverland swords marching in perfect formation down the King's Road. The young wolf has kept his word, bringing his forces to the very gates of Lannister power. In the Red Keep's throne room, King Joffrey Baratheon cowers behind his Kingsguard as the sound of battle grows closer. The boy who ordered Ned Stark's execution now trembles at every dragon roar that shakes the ancient stones around him. "Your Grace," Sir Meryn Trant urges, "we must get you to safety. The dragons—" "I am the king!" Joffrey shrieks, his voice cracking with terror. "Kings do not run from bastard queens and their pets!" But even as he speaks, another gout of dragonfire illuminates the throne room's stained glass windows, and Joffrey flinches like a child afraid of thunder. In the Tower of the Hand, Tyrion Lannister works frantically to coordinate the city's defense. Maps and message scrolls cover every surface as ravens arrive with reports from the walls. The situation grows more desperate with each passing minute. 3 armies converge on us, he tells the assembled commanders. Stark from the north, Stannis from the east, and the Dragon Queen from the south. We cannot hold against all 3. "The wildfire, my lord," suggests one of the pyromancers. "We have enough to burn the entire lower city, force them to retreat or see their prize destroyed." "And kill 500,000 innocent people in the process?" Tyrion's voice carries disgust. "I will not be remembered as the hand who burned King's Landing." "Then what do you propose?" Tyrion looks out the window at the dragons circling overhead, their scales gleaming like dark jewels in the morning light. "We pray for mercy from our enemies, because we will receive none from our allies." At the King's Gate, steel rings against steel as Robb's vanguard crashes into the Lannister defenders. Northern knights charge through the breach created by dragonfire, their great swords cutting through the gold cloaks like wheat before the scythe. Grey Wind, Robb's direwolf, tears through the enemy ranks with savage fury, his howls mixing with the battle cries of the men who follow his master. "For Winterfell," Robb shouts, his crowned helm gleaming as he leads his men through the burning gate. "For Ned Stark!" The northern army pours into the city streets like a flood of vengeance, 18 months of warfare having honed them into a weapon of terrible efficiency. Behind them come the Riverlords, Tully, Blackwood, Mallister, their banners flying beside the dire wolf of Stark. From the harbour comes another sound of battle as Stannis Baratheon's fleet engages the Royal Navy in Blackwater Bay. The would-be king had agreed to coordinate his assault with the Dragon Queen, though his messages made clear he expects to claim the Iron Throne for himself once the Lannisters are defeated. "Stannis complicates everything," Jon tells Sir Donal as they lead their strike force, through the chaotic streets toward the Red Keep. Their mission is simple but crucial. Rescue Sansa Stark before the castle falls, and she becomes a casualty of war. "Let Stannis have his fleet action," Sir Donald replies, cutting down a gold cloak who tries to block their path. "We have dragons and the rightful queen. His claim matters little against dragonfire." They fight their way through streets filled with panicking civilians and desperate soldiers, the Northern strike force moving like a spear aimed at the heart of Lannister power. Overhead, the dragons continue their systematic destruction of the Red Keep's defenses, each pass leaving another tower burning or another section of wall reduced to rubble. In the Queen's ballroom, Sansa Stark kneels beside her window and prays to the old gods and the new. She has heard the dragons roaring, seen the northern banners in the distance, and dares to hope that rescue might finally come. For months, she has been a prisoner in all but name, a political hostage whose only value lies in her name and bloodline. "My lady," Shay enters without knocking, her face pale with fear. "You must come with me. The Queen commands your presence in the throne room." Sansa rises with the dignity her mother taught her, though her hands tremble slightly. Whatever Cersei plans, it cannot be worse than the captivity she has endured since her father's death. The throne room has been transformed into something from a nightmare. Cersei Lannister stands before the Iron Throne in her finest gown, but her green eyes hold the desperate light of madness. Around her, a dozen pyromancers prepare clay pots filled with wild fire, the green substance gleaming like liquid poison in the torchlight. "Ah, little dove," Cersei says with false sweetness as Sansa is brought before her. "Come to witness the end of kings and kingdoms." "Your Grace," Sansa manages, though her voice catches at the sight of so much wildfire. "What are you doing?" "Saving us all from dragons and wolves," Cersei replies. "If I cannot have this throne, then no one shall. Let them burn in the fires they have brought upon themselves." The madness in her voice makes Sansa's blood turn to ice. She realizes with horror that Cersei means to burn the entire Red Keep, destroying herself, her enemies, and anyone caught between them. Outside, Jon's strike force fights their way up the serpentine steps toward the throne room. They have lost 3 men to Lannister guards and Kingsguard knights, but they push forward with the desperation of soldiers who know that time is running out. "The throne room!" Jon shouts over the sound of battle. "Sansa is there!" They charge through the final corridor as another blast of dragonfire shakes the castle around them. Smoke pours through broken windows, and the air tastes of ash and burning stone. The throne room doors burst open, just as Cersei raises the torch that will ignite the wildfire. For a frozen moment, everyone stops. Jon and his men at the entrance, Cersei with her torch, Sansa kneeling helpless between them, and Joffrey cowering behind the Iron Throne itself. "Drop the torch," Jon commands, his sword gleaming in the green light of the wildfire. "It's over, Your Grace. The city has fallen." "Has it?" Cersei's laugh carries no humor. "Then let it burn. Let everything burn." She throws the torch toward the nearest pot of wildfire, but Jon is already moving. His sword takes her hand off at the wrist, sending the torch spinning harmlessly away to clatter against the stone floor. Cersei screams and falls, clutching the bleeding stump as her grand gesture of madness collapses into pathetic agony. "Sansa!" Jon reaches his sister and pulls her to safety as his men secure the throne room. "Are you hurt?" "I'm unharmed," she manages, though tears stream down her face at the sight of her family's banner on Jon's surcoat. "Jon, is it really you? Are we truly free?" "Free and safe," he promises, though his eyes remain fixed on the Iron Throne, where Joffrey still cowers. The boy king who ordered their father's death seems smaller now, diminished by fear and the collapse of everything he thought made him powerful. The sound of massive wings fills the air as Drogon settles in the courtyard outside the throne room, his bulk blocking out the light from the high windows. Through the gaps, they can see Daenerys sliding down from her dragon's neck, her violet eyes bright with triumph and purpose. "The Red Keep is taken," she announces as she strides into the throne room. "The city is ours." She stops when she sees the Iron Throne, that twisted monument to conquest and power that has dominated Westeros for 3 centuries. For a moment, she simply stares at the chair her ancestors built from the swords of defeated enemies. "It's smaller than I expected," she says finally. "Most symbols of power are," Jon replies. "When you strip away the legend, you're left with just metal and stone." Daenerys nods and approaches the throne, but she does not sit. Instead, she looks at the cowering Joffrey with something that might be pity. "Joffrey Baratheon," she says formally, "you are charged with the murders of Eddard Stark, Robert Baratheon, and countless innocents throughout your reign. What say you to these charges?" "I am the king," Joffrey squeaks. "You cannot—" "You are nothing," Daenerys interrupts. "You are a pretender whose power was built on lies and sustained by cruelty. That ends today." But before she can pronounce sentence, another voice cuts through the throne room. "Your Grace." They turn to see Robb Stark entering with his guards, his armor blood-stained, but his bearing triumphant. The young wolf looks around the throne room that has haunted his nightmares for months, then focuses on his sister with visible relief. "Sansa, thank the gods you're safe." The reunion of the Stark siblings fills the throne room with warmth that the Iron Throne has not known in years. But even in victory, questions remain. 3 armies have converged on King's Landing. 3 different claims to power compete for resolution. The battle is won, but the war for Westeros has only just begun. Outside, the dragons roar their approval as smoke rises from the conquered city. Inside the throne room, ancient enemies face each other across the twisted metal chair that has caused so much pain and bloodshed. The Iron Throne has been taken, but the question of who will sit upon it, if anyone, remains to be answered. The Game of Thrones reaches its climax at last, but even victory brings new challenges for those bold enough to reshape the 7 kingdoms. Fire and blood have returned to Westeros, and nothing will ever be the same. Chapter 10. The Price of Victory. The smell of smoke and death hangs over King's Landing like a shroud. From the highest tower of the Red Keep, Jon Stark looks down upon a city transformed by fire and war. Entire districts lie in ruins, where dragonfire and wildfire met in terrible union. The harbour burns with the wrecks of ships from 3 different fleets, their masts reaching up from the water like the fingers of drowned men. Victory has come at a price that weighs heavily on every survivor. The count stands at 12,000 dead, Missandei reports, as she enters with the latest tallies from the City Watch. Perhaps half again as many wounded. The Fleabottom fires are finally under control, but whole neighborhoods have been reduced to ash. Daenerys stands beside the great window, her violet eyes fixed on the devastation below. The crown she inherited from her ancestors feels heavier now, weighted with the knowledge of what conquest truly costs. How many were innocents? Most of them, Your Grace. Soldiers and small folk caught between armies, burned when the wildfire caches ignited. Missandei's voice carries the quiet grief they all feel. The pyromancers stored more of the substance throughout the city than we realized. Jon thinks of the faces in the streets during their march through the burning city. Mothers clutching children, old men stumbling through smoke, families huddled in doorways as their world collapsed around them. These people had no voice in the Game of Thrones, yet they paid its price in blood and flame. The survivors will need food, shelter, medicine, he says. Winter is coming, and half the city's granaries burned in the battle. Already arranged, Daenerys replies. Every ship in the harbor that can still sail is being loaded with supplies from Dragonstone and Driftmark. The dragons can hunt to feed themselves, but the people mustn't starve because of our war. The door opens to admit Robb Stark, still wearing his battle-stained armor, but bearing himself with the quiet dignity that has always marked him as their father's son. Behind him walks Sansa, free for the first time in months, her red hair bright against the grey stone of the castle that held her prisoner. "Brother," Robb says simply, clasping Jon's shoulder in greeting. "Sister speaks truly. You have grown into the name you bear." Jon embraces them both, feeling the weight of separation and loss that has marked their family since Ned Stark's death. Sansa trembles slightly in his arms, the trauma of captivity still too fresh for easy healing. "Is it truly over?" she whispers. "Are we truly safe?" "The Lannisters are finished," Jon assures her. "Joffrey is dead. Cersei and Tyrion are our prisoners. Tywin's army scattered. You are free, Sansa. Free to go home to Winterfell when this business is concluded." But even as he speaks the words of comfort, Jon knows that questions remain. Victory in battle is only the beginning of victory in war, and war is only the beginning of peace. "Speaking of prisoners," Robb says grimly, "we must decide their fate. The lords are calling for justice, and justice demands answers for the crimes committed in the name of House Lannister." They make their way to the throne room, where the twisted metal chair stands empty beneath the great dome. The Iron Throne has witnessed the rise and fall of kings for 3 centuries, but today it looks smaller somehow, diminished by the knowledge of how much blood has been spilled in its name. Tyrion Lannister waits in chains before the throne, his golden hair matted with dirt, and his clever eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Beside him, Cersei Lannister sits in a simple wooden chair, her severed hand wrapped in blood-stained bandages. The woman who ordered countless deaths and plotted to burn an entire city looks older now, broken by defeat and pain. "Your Grace," Tyrion says, as Daenerys approaches the throne, but does not sit upon it. "I congratulate you on your victory, though I confess I had hoped for more favorable terms of surrender." "There were no terms offered, Lord Tyrion," Daenerys replies formally. "Your king chose to fight rather than yield. Your queen mother chose wildfire over mercy. You chose to serve a regime built on murder and tyranny. I chose to protect the city from worse fates than the one that befell it." Tyrion's voice carries the weariness of a man who has seen too much, though I acknowledge the irony of that failure. Stannis Baratheon steps forward from where he has been standing with his own guards and advisors. The would-be king's weathered face shows satisfaction at the Lannister defeat, but also calculation about what comes next. "The pretenders are defeated," he announces. "Justice has been done. Now we must address the question of legitimate rule. I am Robert's heir, the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms. I claim the Iron Throne by right of blood and law." His words echo in the throne room like a challenge thrown down before armed men. For a moment, the alliance that won the battle threatens to fracture over the spoils of victory. "You claim a throne built on rebellion and usurpation," Daenerys counters, her voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries of Targaryen rule. "My family ruled these kingdoms for 300 years before Robert Baratheon stole them through conquest. By right of blood and inheritance, The Iron Throne belongs to House Targaryen. And yet, Robb interjects quietly, the North never consented to Targaryen rule either. Aegon conquered us as surely as Robert conquered you. Perhaps the time has come to ask whether the Seven Kingdoms should remain united at all. The words hang in the air like revolution itself. For 3 centuries, the Iron Throne has been the symbol of unified rule over disparate peoples and cultures. Now, in victory's aftermath, the very concept faces challenge from those who bled to win it. Jon watches the faces around him. Stannis rigid with outraged authority. Daenerys calculating the implications of division. Robb speaking for the independence he has fought to achieve. He thinks of the conversations he has shared with the Dragon Queen, the dreams of justice and peace they have discussed in quiet moments. Perhaps, he says carefully, the question is not who should sit the Iron Throne, but whether anyone should sit it at all. All eyes turn to him, and Jon feels the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders like a cloak he never asked to wear. The Iron Throne was built to impose the will of one king on 7 different kingdoms, he continues. It has brought 3 centuries of rebellions, civil wars and suffering. Maybe it is time for something new, something that serves the people rather than ruling them. You speak of breaking apart the realm, Stannis says coldly, of destroying the unity that has brought peace and prosperity to Westeros. What peace? Robb demands. What prosperity? We have fought 3 wars in living memory alone. The realm bleeds because it cannot be governed as one nation when it was never one people. Daenerys listens to the debate with the careful attention of someone weighing all options before choosing her path. When she speaks, her voice carries the certainty that has marked her greatest decisions. The young wolf speaks wisdom, she says finally. I came to Westeros believing I must rule it all or rule nothing. But ruling is not about holding power. It is about serving justice. If the 7 kingdoms can be better served apart than together, then perhaps they should be divided. Stannis' face darkens with fury. You would destroy 3 centuries of unity? Throw the realm into chaos for the sake of some idealistic notion of self-rule? I would end 3 centuries of imposed unity that has never truly existed, Daenerys counters. The North, the Iron Islands, Dorne. All have maintained their own cultures and customs despite conquest. Perhaps it is time to acknowledge what has always been true. The debate continues through the afternoon as lords and advisers offer their counsel. Maps are spread across tables as new borders are proposed and rejected. The question of what to do with the Iron Throne itself, that twisted symbol of unified rule, generates heated discussion. In the end, it is Tyrion Lannister who offers the solution that satisfies everyone. Melt it down, he suggests from his chains. Take the 1,000 swords that form the throne and return them to the kingdoms they came from. Let each region choose its own path forward. The simplicity of the proposal strikes everyone silent. For a moment, the throne room holds only the sound of distant dragons and the wind through broken windows. Poetic justice, Robb observes. The symbol of conquest becomes the symbol of freedom. It could work, Jon agrees. Independent kingdoms allied by treaty and mutual interest rather than force. Trade agreements instead of tax collection. Cooperation instead of domination. Daenerys nods slowly, her eyes fixed on the Iron Throne that has defined her destiny since birth. Then let it be done. Let the throne be melted and its metal returned to the people it was taken from. Let the 7 kingdoms choose their own rulers and their own laws. And what of you, your grace? Sansa asks. What will the Dragon Queen do in this new world? Daenerys smiles, and for the first time since the battle ended, The expression reaches her eyes. I will rule the Crownlands, and any other region that chooses to accept me. But I will rule as a queen among queens, a king among kings, not as an empress, imposing her will on unwilling subjects. As the sun sets over King's Landing, the great work begins. Ravens fly to every corner of the realm, carrying news of the Lannister defeat and the proposed new order. Lords and small folk alike will have their voices heard in choosing the path forward. In the throne room, workmen prepare to dismantle the Iron Throne itself, that monument to conquest and domination. The twisted metal will be melted down and reformed into something new, perhaps crowns for the independent kingdoms, or plowshares for the fields that have been trampled by too many armies. Do you think it will work? Jon asks Daenerys as they watch the preparations. I think it has a better chance than continuing the cycle of conquest and rebellion that has marked the last 3 centuries, she replies. And even if it fails, at least we will have tried something different. Jon nods, thinking of his father's words about honor and duty, about doing what is right even when it is difficult. Perhaps the greatest honor lies not in holding power, but in choosing when to surrender it for the greater good. Outside, the dragons roar as night falls over a transformed realm. The Game of Thrones has ended not with a new king claiming absolute power, but with the recognition that some games should not be played at all. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight, for the first time in generations, the 7 kingdoms sleep free from the shadow of the Iron Throne. The price of victory has been paid in blood and fire. Now comes the harder task of building something better from the ashes of the old world. But as Jon looks around the throne room at the faces of those who have fought and suffered for this moment, he allows himself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, they have chosen the wiser path. The Game of Thrones is dead. Let something better take its place. Chapter 11. The Iron Throne Melted. The great hall of the Red Keep has not seen such a gathering in living memory. Lords and ladies from every corner of Westeros fill the ancient chamber, their banners hanging from the galleries like a tapestry of the realm's diversity. Stark direwolves share space with Tyrell roses, Martell sons alongside Tully fish, Arryn falcons beside Baratheon stags. For the first time in 3 centuries, the nobles of the 7 kingdoms have come not to bend the knee to a single ruler, but to forge a new compact between equals. At the center of the hall stands a great forge, its fires burning hot enough to melt the strongest steel. Beside it waits the Iron Throne itself, that twisted monument to conquest and domination, dismantled from its platform and ready for its final transformation. The 1,000 swords that formed its bulk lie in organized piles, each bearing the mark of its origin, some ancient beyond memory, others recent additions from fallen enemies. Daenerys Targaryen stands before the assembled lords. No longer wearing a crown, but speaking with the authority that comes from victory earned through justice rather than conquest. Her voice carries clearly through the vast chamber as she addresses the greatest gathering of nobles in generations. My lords and ladies of Westeros, she begins, her violet eyes sweeping across the crowd. We gather today not to crown a new monarch, but to bury an old tyranny. For 300 years, the Iron Throne has been the symbol of rule imposed rather than government chosen. Today we forge something new from its remains. Lord Randall Tarley of Horn Hill steps forward, his weathered face showing skepticism. Your Grace speaks of new forms of governance, but what assurance do we have that this experiment will not lead to chaos and war between the kingdoms? The same assurance we had under the old system, Robb Stark replies from his place among the northern delegation. Which is to say, none at all. The difference is that now, when conflicts arise, they will be settled between equals, rather than subjects appealing to a distant throne that may or may not care about their grievances. Stannis Baratheon, standing rigid with his own bannermen, speaks with the authority of someone who has fought for the throne he now helps to destroy. The proposal before us is unprecedented. 7 independent kingdoms, bound by treaty rather than conquest, each free to govern according to its own laws and customs. It will require wisdom from all rulers and patience from all peoples. But it offers something the old system never could, Jon Stark adds from beside Daenerys. The chance for true peace, based on mutual respect rather than imposed submission. The debate continues for hours as lords voice concerns and offer modifications to the proposed new order. The Reach worries about trade agreements. The Vale questions military cooperation. The Iron Islands demand assurance that their raiding traditions will be respected within agreed boundaries. Each concern is addressed with the patience of leaders who understand that lasting peace requires consensus, not conquest. It is Prince Oberyn Martell who finally calls for the ceremonial beginning of the new age. The Red Viper of Dawn steps forward with his characteristic grace, his dark eyes bright with approval for a plan that grants his homeland the independence it has always craved. Enough words, he declares with a smile that carries genuine warmth. Let us see this throne melted and these kingdoms born. The old order dies today. Let us celebrate its passing. The great forge roars to life as the first swords are fed into its maw. Ancient Valyrian steel and common iron alike melt into molten streams that flow into prepared molds. The work of destruction and creation happens simultaneously as the symbol of unified oppression becomes the foundation of diverse liberation. Maester Aemon, brought from Dragonstone for this historic moment, reads from the formal agreements that will govern the new order. His ancient voice carries across the hall as he outlines the principles that will guide the 7 kingdoms in their new relationship. Each kingdom shall govern itself according to its own laws and customs, provided those laws do not permit slavery or the systematic oppression of the innocent. Trade between the kingdoms shall be free and fair, with disputes settled by mutual agreement or neutral arbitration. No kingdom shall make war upon another, except in defense of itself or its sworn allies. The molten metal cools and hardens into 7 identical crowns, each bearing the same simple design, a circlet of twisted metal that echoes the old throne but carries no symbols of domination or conquest. When they are finished, each crown is presented to the chosen ruler of its respective kingdom. Robb Stark is the first to be crowned, kneeling briefly as Lord Rickard Karstark places the circlet upon his head. Rise, Robb of House Stark, king in the north and the Riverlands, chosen ruler of the free people of winter. The northern lords and riverlords cheer as their king rises, but the sound carries approval rather than submission. These men follow Robb by choice, not because inheritance or conquest demands it. Stannis Baratheon accepts his crown with characteristic dignity, though his jaw tightens slightly as he abandons his claim to absolute rule. I take this crown not as my right, but as my duty to the people of the Stormlands, who have chosen to entrust me with their governance. The ceremony continues with each kingdom choosing its path. The Reach selects Lord Mace Tyrell, though with clear limitations on his authority. The Vale chooses to maintain its traditional system under Lord Jon Arryn's regency. Dawn confirms Prince Doran Martell as its ruler, finally achieving the independence it has always maintained in spirit. When Daenerys' turn comes, she accepts the crown of the Crownlands with words that transform the very nature of monarchy in Westeros. I accept this crown not as Daenerys the First, but as Daenerys the Only. Let no one inherit absolute power from my death, but let the people choose their own path when my time ends. The Iron Islands prove the most complex case. Balon Greyjoy died during the war, and his son Theon remains missing. The Ironborn captains gather in fierce debate before choosing Asha Greyjoy as their queen, but with strict agreements about the limits of their traditional reaving. As the ceremony draws toward its conclusion, Daenerys calls Jon forward for the final proclamation. The great hall falls silent as the Dragon Queen addresses the man who has become her partner in reshaping the world. "Jon Stark of Winterfell," she says formally, "you came to me as an envoy seeking alliance. You have proven yourself worthy of far more than diplomatic courtesy. I name you my heir and hand, my partner in ruling the Crownlands, and my ally in maintaining the peace we have forged together." The words carry implications that ripple through the assembled nobles. A bastard made legitimate, elevated to heir of a dragon queen, represents the new order's commitment to merit over birth, choice over tradition. "Moreover," Daenerys continues, "I propose that our alliance be sealed not merely through treaty, but through marriage. If Jon Stark will have me, I offer myself as wife, partner, and equal in ruling the Crownlands and maintaining peace throughout the Seven Kingdoms." The proposal brings gasps from some quarters and knowing nods from others. Political marriages have always sealed important alliances, but this offer carries deeper meaning, the promise of partnership rather than dominance, equality rather than submission. Jon steps forward and takes Daenerys' hands in his own, his grey eyes meeting her violet ones with complete understanding. "I accept your proposal, Your Grace, not for the crown or the power, but for the woman who has proven herself worthy of trust, respect, and love." The great hall erupts in cheers as the last political alliance of the day is forged. But even as the celebration begins, practical matters remain to be addressed. Sansa Stark approaches her brothers with a request that surprises no one who knows her well. "I want to return to Winterfell," she says simply. "I want to help rebuild what we have lost and learn to govern our people with justice rather than fear." "You will always have a place there," Robb assures her, as will Jon when his duties here permit him to visit home. "Home," Jon repeats softly, thinking of how much that word has changed since he left the wall to cross the narrow sea. "I suppose home is not a place anymore, but the people we choose to serve and protect." As evening falls over King's Landing, the great work of transformation continues. The melted iron throne becomes more than 7 crowns. Its metal is forged into treaty tablets, trade agreements, and symbols of the new compact between the kingdoms. Every piece serves the cause of cooperation rather than domination. In the royal chambers that night, Daenerys and Jon plan their wedding and their future together. Maps cover the tables as they discuss how to govern the Crownlands with justice, how to maintain trade relationships with the other kingdoms, how to ensure that the peace they have won survives the test of time. "Do you think it will work?" Jon asks, as they watch the dragons circling overhead, their shadows passing across a city slowly rebuilding itself from the ashes of war. "I think it has a chance," Daenerys replies. "A better chance than the old system ever offered. We have given people the right to choose their own destinies. That is the foundation of any lasting peace. And if some choose poorly, Then they will learn from their mistakes, as free people must. We cannot force wisdom upon the unwilling, but we can create conditions where wisdom has room to grow. Jon nods, thinking of the long road that brought them to this moment, from the wall to Slaver's Bay, to the throne room of the Red Keep. Every step has led to this choice, not to seize power for themselves, but to share it among all who would use it wisely. Outside their window, the lights of King's Landing flicker like stars in the darkness. But these are not the desperate flames of battle or the fearful torches of oppression. These are the hearth fires of families rebuilding their lives, the workshop flames of craftsmen returning to their trades, the tavern lanterns of people learning to celebrate freedom rather than merely endure survival. The Iron Throne is dead. 7 kingdoms are born. The Game of Thrones has ended, and something better has taken its place. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight, for the first time in generations, the realm sleeps under rulers who serve by choice rather than rule by force. The age of kings ends. The age of chosen leaders begins, and in the royal chambers of a transformed Red Keep, a bastard-made lord and a dragon queen plan their wedding and dream of the just world they will build together from the ashes of the old tyranny. Chapter 12. The Long Summer. 6 months after the fall of King's Landing, Dragonstone hosts its first royal wedding in 3 centuries. The ancient Valyrian castle stands transformed for the occasion, its dragon-carved halls decorated with banners from all 7 kingdoms, and filled with guests who come not as subjects, but as allies and friends. Daenerys Targaryen stands before the Sept of Remembrance, wearing a gown of silver silk that catches the morning light like captured starfire. Her violet eyes shine with happiness as she watches Jon Stark approach, resplendent in the black and red of House Targaryen, combined with the grey and white of House Stark. The symbolism is deliberate. 2 great houses, 2 different worlds, united in love and common purpose. Septon Meribald performs the ceremony, his weathered voice carrying across the gathered crowd as he speaks words that have blessed marriages for generations. But today those ancient vows carry new meaning, for this union represents more than personal happiness. It symbolizes the alliance between ice and fire that has transformed the 7 kingdoms. Do you, Jon of House Stark, take this woman as your wife, to love and protect, to honor and cherish, from this day until your last day? I do, Jon replies, his grey eyes never leaving Daenerys' face. Before the old gods and the new, I take her as my wife and partner. Do you, Daenerys of House Targaryen, take this man as your husband, to love and support, to honor and cherish, from this day until your last day? I do, Daenerys answers, her voice clear and certain. Before the old gods and the new, I take him as my husband and equal. As the Septon pronounces them wed, the dragons roar overhead in celebration. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion circle the castle in precise formation, their shadows passing over a gathering that represents the new order in Westeros. Lords and ladies from every kingdom witness this union, their presence testimony to the peace that has replaced centuries of conquest and rebellion. The feast that follows takes place in the Great Hall, where Aegon the Conqueror once planned his invasion of Westeros. Now his descendant celebrates a different kind of conquest, the triumph of cooperation over domination, of chosen alliance over imposed rule. Robb Stark raises his cup in toast to his brother and new sister by marriage. To Jon and Daenerys, whose courage brought us victory and whose wisdom brought us peace, may their union be blessed with happiness and their reign marked by justice. The hall erupts in cheers as nobles from across the realm drink to the health of the newlywed couple. At the high table, representatives from each of the 7 kingdoms share food and wine, their conversations focused on trade agreements and mutual cooperation rather than military threats and territorial disputes. The harvest reports from the Reach are excellent, Lord Mace Tyrell informs the gathering. We expect surplus grain enough to supply any kingdom that needs it through the coming winter. And the North offers timber and furs in exchange, Robb responds. Our forests grow thick again, now that we are not burning them for siege engines and funeral pyres. Such conversations would have been impossible under the old system, where competing claims to the Iron Throne made every kingdom a potential enemy. Now, with each region governing itself while cooperating with others, trade flows freely and conflicts are resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Sansa Stark sits beside her brothers, her face bright with contentment. In the months since her rescue from King's Landing, she has thrown herself into the work of rebuilding the North, learning statecraft and diplomacy with the dedication she once applied to needlework and dancing. Lords throughout the northern kingdoms have sent marriage proposals, but she has made clear she will choose her own path in her own time. I have received word from the Riverlands, she tells Jon during a quiet moment between toasts. Edmure Tully asks if you might visit when your duties permit. He wants to discuss trade routes along the Trident. And I have received letters from the Vale, Jon replies. Young Robert Arryn is eager to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Crownlands. It seems the new order is working better than we dared hope. Indeed, across the 7 kingdoms, the transition to independence has proceeded more smoothly than anyone expected. Without the burden of maintaining centralized control over diverse regions, each kingdom has been free to develop its strengths and address its particular needs. The North focuses on agriculture and forestry, the Reach on trade and manufacturing, Dawn on its traditional autonomy and unique culture. Most importantly, the absence of a single throne to fight over has eliminated the primary source of conflict that plagued Westeros for 3 centuries. Lords ambitious for power can seek advancement within their own kingdoms rather than plotting to overthrow distant monarchs who may or may not understand their local concerns. The Iron Islands have honored their agreements, Stannis Baratheon reports to the assembled council. Queen Asha has limited her people's raiding to foreign shores and established profitable trading relationships with the free cities. And what of Dorne? Daenerys asks. Prince Doran seemed hesitant about the new arrangements. He has embraced them wholeheartedly, Princess Arianne Martell responds. Her father sent her as Dorne's representative to the wedding, another sign of the respect the new order commands. We have waited centuries for this level of independence. The Dornish are pleased to govern themselves while maintaining friendship with their neighbors. As the feast continues into the evening, Jon and Daenerys slip away to walk the castle battlements where they first planned their alliance months ago. The dragons perch nearby, their bulk no longer needed for war, but still impressive symbols of the power that protects the new peace. Do you miss it? Jon asks as they watch the sun set over Blackwater Bay. The Iron Throne, the absolute power, the ability to command rather than negotiate. Daenerys considers the question carefully. I miss the simplicity of it sometimes. When you command, you need not convince or compromise. But I do not miss the loneliness. Power shared is not power diminished. It is power multiplied by the wisdom of others. And the dragons? What role do they serve now that we are no longer conquering kingdoms? They remind everyone that our cooperation is chosen, not forced. That peace exists because we will it to exist. not because anyone lacks the strength to break it. Daenerys reaches out to touch Drogon's warm scales. They are symbols now rather than weapons. I prefer them this way. A year passes with remarkable swiftness. The first council of 7 kingdoms meets in the ruins of the old throne room, where the melted Iron Throne has been replaced with a round table that seats representatives from each kingdom as equals. Trade agreements are signed, territorial disputes are settled through arbitration, and joint military exercises ensure that the kingdoms can still defend themselves against foreign threats. Robb's wedding to Lady Roslyn Frey heals the old wounds between the Starks and the Freys, while his marriage proves both personally happy and politically successful. The union brings the Riverlands fully into the Northern Kingdom's sphere, while maintaining the crucial river crossings that make trade possible. The dragons prove their worth as peacekeepers when raiders from the Stepstones threaten shipping in the narrow sea. A single appearance by Daenerys and Drogon over their fleet convinces the pirates to seek easier prey, demonstrating that the 7 kingdoms may be divided politically, but remain united in their defense. Most importantly, the new system proves capable of adapting to changing circumstances. When a dispute arises between the Reach and the Stormlands over water rights along their border, the Council of 7 Kingdoms provides neutral arbitration that satisfies both parties. The resolution becomes a precedent for future conflicts, creating a body of law based on negotiation rather than royal decree. 2 years after their wedding, as winter finally breaks and spring returns to Westeros, Daenerys gives birth to a daughter. Little Lyanna Targaryen Stark enters the world with a cry that echoes through Dragonstone's halls, announcing the arrival of a new generation born into peace rather than war. Jon holds his daughter for the first time, while the dragons circle overhead, their roars mixing with the child's cries in a symphony of old magic and new hope. The baby has her mother's silver hair and her father's grey eyes, marking her as a child of both ice and fire. She will never know the Iron Throne, Daenerys says softly, as she watches her husband cradle their daughter. She will grow up believing that cooperation is normal, that kingdoms can govern themselves while remaining friends. She will know a better world than we did, Jon agrees. Not perfect, but better. That may be the best legacy we can leave. As spring turns to summer, the 7 kingdoms prosper under their new arrangement. Trade flourishes between regions, cultural exchange enriches all the kingdoms, and the absence of civil war allows resources to be devoted to building rather than destroying. Young Lyanna grows under the protection of dragons and the love of parents who rule through service rather than domination. She learns to speak High Valyrian from her mother and the Old Tongue from her father, preparing her for a world where cooperation between diverse peoples is not just possible but essential. The great experiment in self-governance faces challenges, as all political systems must, but each crisis reveals new strengths in the structure Jon and Daenerys helped create. When wildling raids threaten the North's borders, the other kingdoms provide military support without being commanded to do so. When storms damage the Stormlands' harbours, the Reach and the Crown Lands send aid without expecting territorial concessions in return. Most remarkably, the system proves capable of peaceful transitions of power. When Lord Mace Tyrell dies, the Reach chooses his daughter Margaery as their new queen, demonstrating that the new order can evolve beyond the traditional patterns of inheritance that characterized the old system. 5 years after the fall of the Iron Throne, on a perfect summer day, when the sun shines bright over all 7 kingdoms, Jon and Daenerys stand once again on Dragonstone's battlements. Their daughter plays at their feet while the dragons soar overhead, and in the distance they can see ships from every kingdom moving freely through waters no longer contested by warring fleets. The masters are calling it the long summer, Jon observes, watching merchant vessels from Dawn and the Iron Islands passing each other, with friendly signals rather than hostile intentions. Not just because of the weather, but because of the peace we have maintained. May it last 1,000 years, Daenerys replies, her hand resting on her husband's shoulder as they watch their daughter attempt to build castles from the ancient stones. May she never know the Game of Thrones, except as a cautionary tale told by old men who remember darker times. The dragons roar their agreement as they circle the castle one final time before settling on their perches to rest. Below them, the Seven Kingdoms continue their work of governing themselves, trading with each other, and building the future that Jon Stark and Daenerys Targaryen made possible through their courage to imagine something better than what came before. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.